here. So I reached out to another friend of mine. I said, look, I need to go on vacation somewhere. Where should I go? He said, go to Africa. And not only am I going to go, I'm going to explore a new country. So I went to Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia, Mali, Senegal, Morocco, Liberia, Namibia, Kenya, the Voodoo Festival in Ouida, Gambia, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire. Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria. It's been a beautiful experience, just learning more about our culture, our indigenous culture. So Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. I'm in search of my roots. In finding that, I would experience my Uhuru, which is freedom. Till next time, Dynast Amir, I'm out.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. I'm muted now. I'm muted. Shout out to everybody who is watching. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you guys, my beautiful people, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people. Thank you so much for the support. It really means a lot. You need to go back to Kenya. I do need to go back to Kenya. I haven't been to Kenya in a minute. I've been to Kenya twice. Last time I was in Kenya was 2016, or was it 2014? No, because 2014, that's when I moved back to Atlanta from LA. It might have been 2016. I think 2016 was the last time I was in Kenya. Yeah, I do. I need to get back to Kenya. Absolutely. I'll probably go back to Kenya. I don't know when I'm going to go back to Kenya. But anyways, guys, no, I'm not muted anymore. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Press 1 if you can hear me. I shouldn't be muted. I muted myself. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Again, as you come into the chat room, again, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Before we get started, we got some announcements. Announcement number 1. Listen, if you have not bought the documentary, the #1 documentary of the year, In Search of Uhuru, that was just the trailer that was playing. Make sure you go to searchforuhuru.com. Again, please go to searchforuhuru.com and buy the documentary. I would greatly appreciate it. Please go to searchforuhuru.com and buy the documentary, family. I would greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate it. Oh, guys, let me show you guys something real quick. So I just launched the NFT, or one of the NFTs. Let me show it to you guys real quick. So if you travel on one of the tours, one of the In Search of Uhuru tours, you will receive an NFT, and the NFT basically give you access to certain perks that I'm going to offer throughout the year. So guys, this is the NFT right here. Hold on. Oh, hold on. Let me lower the screen. And if you've been on a past tour, I'm going to be sending the NFTs out this week, okay? Been kind of delayed, but you guys are going to get your NFT. So let me show you guys this NFT real quick. So if you travel with me on one of the tours, you will receive an NFT. And this is the NFT right here, you guys. This is one of them. I have another one in the works, and that should be up here listed shortly. So the NFTs are listed on OpenSea right now, but if you travel on a tour with me, you get one complimentary. I'm going to start airdropping them. So I was supposed to do it last week. I'm going to start airdropping them this week. But if you want to buy one, if you want to have access to certain perks, in fact, I'll give you an example. So we're heading to Senegal. We're heading to Sierra Leone in April, going to Senegal in May, and Nigeria in August. So included in these tours, you have breakfast and lunch and one dinner, right? And so I'm going to start calling these dinners like our family dinner. And if you're in Sierra Leone, if you're in Senegal, or if you're in Nigeria, and if you have one of these NFTs, you could join a dinner with us. Again, you could join the dinner, but let's blow up the NFT. So if you want to buy the NFT for some reason, you don't want to come on a tour, you can have the NFT, you could buy it. If you happen to be in one of the countries that we're traveling in and you're present for the and you want to attend the family dinner, that's just some of the perks I'm coming up with. You got your NFT, you're more than welcome to sit down and break bread with us and gain entry with your NFT. I'm going to be doing the same thing here in America. So right now I'm in Atlanta. I'm in New York. That's where I usually fly out of. I'm going to be spending some more time on the West Coast. So listen, I'll pull up to one of these cities. You got your NFT. Hey, come meet me at this African restaurant. Dinner on me. You never had jollof rice? You got your NFT. I'm in town. Come pull up jollof rice on me. So it's going to be perks that you're going to have access to when you acquire one of these NFTs. Hold on. Here we go. So that's the NFT. So again, buy the NFT, you have access to perks. When you travel on a tour with me, you're going to get one airdrop for free. So that's that for the NFTs. We got the tours coming up. Like I said, Sierra Leone in August. I'm sorry, Sierra Leone in April. They have not officially announced the citizenship ceremony yet, but my close sources said there's going to be another ceremony in April. So if you're interested in joining us in Sierra Leone, where's my passport at? Right here. Where's my passport? Let me grab my passport. There we go. If you want to join us in Sierra Leone, and if you're eligible for citizenship, hit me up. Love to take you. Love for you to join us. Also, what else? Senegal in May. All right, Senegal in May for the Jazz Festival. We're going to have a great time in Senegal for the Jazz Festival. Go to donfoda.africa to learn more. And then we're rolling to Nigeria in August. We're rolling to Nigeria in August for the Oshun Festival. So Nigeria in August for the Oshun Festival, Senegal in May for the Jazz Festival, and in Sierra Leone in April. Even if you're not eligible for citizenship, please, you're more than welcome to come join us in Sierra Leone. Love to have you. Go to donfo.africa. That's DANFO.Africa. Again, that's DANFO.Africa. We will love to have you on one of our tours. All right, let's jump into today's topic. So as we always do, a format in about 30 minutes. We'll open up the lines and people can call in and add to the conversation. In the meantime, guys, make sure you hit that like button. Here we go. How Africa can avoid getting scrambled again. And shout out to Professor Davis. You know, Professor Davis, I need to call Professor Davis back. Professor Davis, if you're watching this, I think you are. I know I need to call you back. I know I do. How Africa can avoid getting scrambled again. And we're going to go through this, break it down. Then I'll give my feedback, and then you guys can call in. African leaders must be more imaginative and proactive in pooling their efforts and setting the agenda. At the conclusion of the Berlin Conference, 1884, and then, guys, this photo is from the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit, which was in December. At the conclusion of the Berlin Conference of 1884 through 1885, which notoriously carved up the African continent and apportioned its territories to Europe's imperial powers of the day, signatories to the act that formalized the new borders and zones of influence highlighted education and the material well-being of the native populations as justification for the historic power grabs. Over the half centuries or so that followed what came to be known as the Scramble for Africa, Europe did virtually nothing to further education on the continent and inflicted some of the worst atrocities of the modern era on Africans. As colonialists reacted to extract natural resources using land seizures and forced labor, and implemented military conscription to fight and provide pack horse-like logistical support in Europe wars. Most of what is recalled today about is this terrible scramble are the arbitrary borders that created numerous economically crippled landlocked territories and by turns divided members of coherent ethnic groupings and thrust together people with vast cultural differences or histories of enmity. Did I say that right? Forgotten almost completely are the moral rationales that Western powers mobilized to justify their takeover and stewardship of an entire continent. Much has been written lately about a new scramble for Africa that is supposedly underway, involving a growing list of outside powers. The list is led by China, the United States, France, and Russia, but also present are other parties that have less history of involvement with Africa, but are now being drawn in, including Brazil, Japan, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf states, South Korea, Turkey, Vietnam, and others. All are seeking business opportunities on the continent, positioned to drive most human population growth over the rest of the century, or more assiduously are aiming to counter the influence of a global or regional rival. So this is the difference between the Scramble of Africa that was started with the Berlin Conference and this new scramble for Africa is China and Russia were involved. And as we can see, I know a lot of people don't agree with China and what Russia's doing on the continent, but they're at least bringing infrastructure. Meanwhile, the West brought destabilization. That's why I personally don't have too much faith I'm not expecting much from this U.S. Africa summit, if you ask me. I'm just going off the past history of Western engagement, American engagement with the continent. Because the West, United States of America, has been implicated and involved with just about every major assassination of African leaders. So that's why I'm just like, yeah, whatever. We'll see how it goes. I don't have my hopes up too high. Again, I don't have my hopes up too high. And we'll see where it goes. All right, let's get back to the article here. Not everyone in Washington, it seems, got the memo that Africans don't want to be lectured about distrusting the Chinese, or even more so, to be nudged in the direction of a coalition of favoring one outside power over another. After a meeting on the margins of the summit with recently elected Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema, for instance, Republican Senator Jim Risch, the ranking member on the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, tweeted, "I was honored to meet with Hichilema a strong leader and bright spot for democracy in Africa. HH is working hard to curb China's malign and predatory influence in the Zambia. Oh my goodness. Oh man. So I see what they're trying to do. I see what the US is trying to do. They're trying to demonize China when in essence, if you look at the history of the United States of America and its engagement with Africa, the US has been the demons. But yeah. That's funny. That's real funny. All right, let's jump back in here. As well, increased cooperation with the U.S., I look forward to many years of continued partnership. China has not been alone as a target in the U.S. strive to build influence and limit that of rivals in Africa. While Washington's summit was underway, the Wall Street Journal ran a lengthy feature about Russian activities on the continent, which took as a given a Biden administration premise that after years of losing ground to others in Africa, the United States needed to push to rebuild its influence there. This time using a longtime U.S. client state, Uganda, as an example, Russia was presented as the nemesis. The promises with this sort of thinking, suddenly so ubiquitous, are multiple. Most importantly, few seem to have dwelled on the question of what the purpose is of building U.S. influence in Africa, a continent that has always placed at or near the bottom of the list of Washington's global priorities in a generic sort of way. The answers offered up by the Biden administration lately have a positive ring to them, but they don't seem deeply connected to U.S. behavior, whether that be consistent diplomacy, support for democracy, major sustained foreign policy initiatives, or the engagement of the business community. Moreover, as long as the question of what intrinsic reasons make Africa deserving of greater U.S. attention remains open, the only available answer returns us to the unsatisfyingly empty and potentially dangerous logic of the scramble. The continent is there and others are gaining influence on it. No one should expect the present scramble, such as it is, to play out anything like the historic one did, but that does not mean it does not have great potential for serious harm. Seeking to lock down mineral wealth that is crucial for strategic frontier sectors, from batteries to mobile phones to nuclear power before others can, are subjecting African nations to litmus tests about their support for foreign policy questions intrinsic to the continent, say relations with Taiwan or Russia's invasion of Ukraine, sustains the continent's subordination to others. Yeah, who are you faithful to? Who are you faithful to? You know this, I forgot the guy's name. I think his last name is Meeks. He drafted this countering Russia and Africa proposal. But pretty much, if you do any work with Russia, you're considered a threat. So this is Cold War shit that they're doing now, where if you're even accused of being in cahoots with Russia, you're a communist, and then here come the economic hitmen to take you out. So they're trying to do that again. That's what the U.S. is trying to do. Some of the answers to the questions of how to break out of the patterns of the past lie in Africa itself, while others require a revolution in the mindsets of the global powers that are ramping up their drives for influence there. None will be easy. First, Africa must find more effective ways to speak with one voice, or at least fewer voices. This is the unavoidable price of having been so severely balkanized during the Berlin Conference nearly a century and a half ago. This will require engaging outside world, not as an entire continent made of 54 disparate and mostly small countries that have little economic or diplomatic leverage in the world, but instead making better use of regional diplomacy, including working through regional organizations such as the Economic Community of West African States. So guys, listen, when you come to Sierra Leone in April, if you're eligible for citizenship, when you receive your Sierra Leone passport, it is an ECOWAS passport. You can see it right there. So you have access to, I think it's 15 African countries visa-free. It's an ECOWAS passport. That's what you get. The East African Community or the Southern African Development Community, SADC. A baby step was made in this direction recently with the Biden administration proposal that African countries receive permanent representation in the G20. Almost simultaneously to this, Senegal's President Macky Sall told the New York Times that Africa is seeking not one, but 2 seats on the UN Security Council. The practical and political obstacles to this proposal are many, making it something that is unlikely to occur anytime soon, if ever, but it is good to see this level of plain spoken ambition. And so right before this U.S.-Africa summit, Macky Sall flew to Russia to sit down with Putin and discuss, trade and, continue to build on a relationship. So all this is the United States of America is being reactionary because China, in fact, that's another show. The United States of America is being reactionary because of, let me message myself, because of the inroads between, or the relationships that African countries are building between, themselves, Russia and China. So now America feels threatened. That's all this is. It's all reactionary, in my honest opinion. That's another show. Hold on one second, guys. Because I'll forget. So let me just text myself. USA Africa Summit reactionary. Okay, there we go. Africa's history of subjugation and inclusion require radical reconsideration of the way it is represented in global institutions. If that is not enough, its population, which amounted to less than 1/10 of the world's population in 1950, will account for 40% of humanity by the end of the century, according to UN predictions, lending still inadequately recognized urgency to this question. Even more fundamental, perhaps, than learning to speak with fewer voices is that African countries must somehow become much better drivers of the agenda of their international engagement. More of the priority should come out of Africa itself, which should mean less acceptance of more or less of the shelf plans from outside powers, whether that means Chinese infrastructure, U.S. capacity building, or other forms of engagement that favor non-governmental organizations and civil society. Critically, in these cases, as well as with Russia's burgeoning security presence on the continent, most of the funds flow back to the outside power, taking greater. And guys, this article's, I'm gonna put this article, let me put this article in the chat room real quick before I forget. It's from foreignpolicy.com. Foreignpolicy.com. For foreignpolicy.com. Taking greater change should also mean pushing for conventions around borrowing, lending, and debt so that the continent is less at mercy of practices defined by Washington or the international financial institutions the United States has traditionally dominated, or Beijing or someone else. This is already asking a lot, but if Africa is to cease being a ward or a stepchild of the international system, its leaders are going to have to be much more imaginative and proactive in pulling their efforts and setting the agenda. For the United States, suddenly fearful of being left out amid the attention to Africa, the best way to convince Africans of its interest is not through the tired and overused formula of big summits, a patronizing form of African convocation invented by the French long ago and eagerly embraced more recently by China. Quiet and steady engagement is better. The tools for doing so are not sitting obviously on the shelf, but in economics. The United States must get its companies more involved on the continent in ways that are less centered on extraction of oil and minerals and more focused on manufacturing and knowledge-based industries, of which Africa is in desperate need. It is not clear that Washington has diplomatic energy or bandwidth to do this, but more frequent high-level engagement with the continent, including at the presidential level, is an important gauge of seriousness. One useful course of action might be having industrialists flying with U.S. President Joe Biden on bilateral visits to African countries to strike business deals that move away from mining and pumping oil. Many of Africa's top line needs are obvious. As I have written elsewhere, the continent is urbanizing at a pace in scale never seen before. But too many of his cities are chaotic, unplanned messes. Housing construction on a massive scale, as well as figuring out financing by leveraging pensions, insurance funds, and revenues from extractive industries are ripe areas for doing well by doing good. By 2050, about 40% of the people under the age of 18 will be African. Stop and read that again. Oh, wow. And if you don't see that as an enormous market for education, something is not right. The West has a choice between bemoaning African migration, which, given demographic trends, will inevitably grow significantly in the decades ahead, or trying to get ahead of the curve by forming educational partnerships on a continent desperate for more and better skilled schools and universities and the knowledge-based jobs that can flow from them. So far in this scramble, with countries driven by their search for influence, nobody has emerged looking very good. Maybe it's time to be driven by something else. All right, guys. So I'm going to put the link in the chat room. Please hit the like button. All right. If you're watching this, please hit the like button. Hit the like button. Listen, I like Macky Sall too, but I think the election is the Senegalese election this year or next year? Let me look that up real quick. Hold on. Let me look up when Macky Sall is. Hold on a second. Macky Sall, election. When's the next Senegalese election? Is it 2024? Hold on. Next Senegalese election. Next Senegalese election. (2024). So next year is the Senegalese election. So guys, listen, I'm gonna put the link in the chat room. Click on the link. You're more than welcome to call in after the conversation. We're gonna take a quick commercial break. We got a word from our sponsors. We got to pay some bills.
At the Okoli Law Group, we specialize in producing justice. If you or a loved one in the Atlanta metro area is facing serious criminal charges, then you need serious legal representation.
The Okoli Law Group is here for you. The Okoli Law Group is here for us.
The Okoli Law Group, serious legal representation.
Learn the ins and outs of IT and launch your IT career in just a matter of weeks with the help of Lifting the Veil IT Academy.
I took Lifting the Veil Academy with some. Took a while, but I'm here. I made it. I'm now an SSRS developer. I started on the 13th, making a rate of $48 an hour.
Sign up for a free consultation and see where this industry could take you.
To learn more, go to www.ltvacademy.com. That's www.ltvacademy.com.
Larry, go ahead.
Hello. Nice advert. So does that mean you're monetized, by the way?
Yeah. I've been monetized, but now I'll offer ads as well. So when people want to come on and pay down as our product, can I buy ads on your platform? Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. Your question about how Africa can avoid the Scramble for Africa 2.0. I'd say the continent as a whole, I don't think they can stop it. I mean, not too long ago, America invaded Iraq and invaded Afghanistan. So what's stopping America from invading any African country if they chose to? What's stopping most superpowers from invading any African country? The African countries don't have the military power to stop it from happening. So they couldn't stop it from happening. Militarily, they can't. So if they can't stop it militarily, they would have to improve their military, which is nowhere near on the same level as America, Britain, or China. So from a militaristic perspective, they can't stop the scramble. And so I don't think it could be stopped militarily. Economic, I mean, but nowadays you can't even stop it economically. I mean, you know probably more than I, because you've traveled to the West. The CFA currency is being utilized, so that's a form of imperialism, scramble. So that hasn't been destroyed. So you can't stop the scramble. The scramble is still going on. It's just changed its the way it looks. It doesn't look the traditional way where you have soldiers marching in. It's got a new style, and that's not being stopped. No. So I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, because I'm usually the optimistic one, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you know how it can be stopped, Dynast. I don't know, but it can't be stopped. It's still going on now. So,
I mean, do we really fear other people's militaries like that?
Well, you know more than I. Like I think it's Burkina Faso and Mali. The people have been fighting against the French military.
I mean, they kicked the French out.
Yeah. So it is still viewed, and there are certain African countries like Djibouti, which is basically a military base. China has military drones there, has military base there. America has a military base there. Who else has a military? Germany, Japan. They have military bases in Djibouti, and they have military bases in various parts of Africa. So you can't stop the scramble unless the African countries' military was as powerful as the West.
But Larry, I mean, countries are always going to be under threat. I mean, that's just the way things are.
Yeah, I mean, you can try and make your country a success whilst you are covertly being conquered, but you will never stop yourself from being conquered unless A, your military is much more stronger than China or Russia or America, and no African country has a military that is as strong as theirs. So you can't stop the scramble. You can do your best to survive and make your country very successful as a vassal state, but that's about it. You won't be empowered or truly independent. It's like thousands of years ago when the Roman Empire conquered various places. You could be a successful vassal state under Rome, but you couldn't stop Rome from interfering with you and taking your resources. You didn't have the power unless you had the military power to stop it, and no African country has that. So you can't stop the scramble. You can just try and make yourself successful under the scramble, but you will be scrambled for it because you don't have the military to stop it, unfortunately.
Oh, go ahead, Al.
Good evening, Dias. Good evening, everyone. Maybe it's good afternoon over there in America. I mean, I kind of disagree with you, Larry. I mean, it all depends on the younger generation, because our ancestors did not let that happen in a certain degree, because we managed to gain independence. And a lot of these countries in West Africa that gained independence, it's not just handed over to them like that. It's because they fought back. If the West, if NATO was so powerful, why they been in the Sahel fighting, in the
Al, we lost you. The Fox, go ahead, the Fox.
What up, family? So I think we can stop it. It can be stopped, and I think a good example of that is Saudi Arabia. When you think Saudi Arabia, they don't have a strong military. But in the 70s, they were able to bring the U.S. government to their knees based off of oil production. But it's not just Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabian oil. Saudi Arabia is part of an oil cartel known as OPEC. So they formed a bunch of alliances to control the oil market. I'm saying all that to say, when it comes to Africa and its minerals and its mines, they need to start forming coalitions across these different African countries to control the global market when it comes to these things. So whenever somebody do step to Saudi Arabia, they already know they step into all of OPEC. If they step into all of OPEC, they step into the whole market. It's the same thing. So we need cobalt cartels, we need chocolate cartels or cocoa cartels. All of these things that come from Africa, they need to start forming alliances based off of these things. I think another thing that can curb the scramble is the internal policy. I think they need to find a way to do some type of, I guess you could call it socialism in the workplace, or they call it democracy in the workplace, where you have to vote for who's going to be your leader. So that way, if a multinational corporation want to come in and kind of destabilize the region, that multinational corporation would still have to adhere to those local policies, which say, hey, you can be here, but this is the way it's done. So if we want to vote for the president, of this company, then that's just the rules. And typically, if you have all the people there, within the country, they're going to vote for their own people. And that way you can curve a lot of outside influence. So those are just a couple ideas. It can be done. You don't necessarily need a military might. You can use what they call soft power in ways to subvert people who use the hard forms of hard power. But that's my take on it.
Oh, go ahead, Tunaja.
I've never seen any people that use soft power to get out of this. And even the Saudis, their power is generally based on the fact that they are the center of the Islamic world. And they are, make no mistake, they are not powerful yet. If America wants to mess with Saudi Arabia, they will mess with Saudi Arabia big time. It's just that they don't want the economic repercussion and religious repercussion that will come from that. And America and Saudi Arabia is serving the interests of America by and large. They are doing exactly what America wants. They are not messing around.
They dropped the US dollar, by the way.
They said they did, but they are still trading with it. But see, they are. What they are saying is that they are open to the other axis. From doing that. America doesn't want that. Obviously, America right now, they see that America is messing around with them too. You notice that America has been a little bit rough with Saudi Arabia recently, stopping the weapons that they're giving to them to fight the Yemenis and all the rest. So the Saudi Arabians are just rattling their teeth. In the end, Saudi Arabia is getting a lot of help from China, and that is part of the reason why America cannot necessarily mess with Saudi Arabia. You see what I mean? So in the end, it's all about power and the kind of alliances you try to sign on to. At the same time, what you have at home. Saudi Arabia is relatively organized at home. And most of our black nations, they are not necessarily very organized. They need to be a lot more organized and a lot more in lockstep. We are not even close to the military or security posture of Saudi Arabia at all. No black country is, apart from Eritrea, that seems to have gotten that part right. So if we want to get out of this, first thing, clean house, get your security posture to at least the minimum. That's in terms of international security level. You get it up to that point, then you start, signing up necessary alliances and making links with all our diaspora, because the diaspora that we have does have political power and economic power to affect change around the world. Because especially when you have the other aspect with that somebody called soft power. So we have a lot of leverages. It's just that our leaders are not pulling it yet, and our people are not making them pull it yet. In the context of Nigeria, we are trying. We are in discussions all the time about these things to force the leaders. Our leaders to, secure us better, industrialize better. And there's a lot of industrialization going on in Nigeria right now. Dangote refinery is coming on stream. Rice mill came on stream the other day. They are manufacturing transformers in Nigeria, manufacturing ships. So all this is happening slowly and steadily. Things are cranking into gear. But the whole Africa needs to start getting like that. And security. When we say security, it's not only military, your intelligence services, you have to be everywhere. You have to be all over the world. All your people have to have eyes out for your nation to protect your heritage and your people, including the diaspora. all of them, because if you have assets and people that can lend to your power in your this thing at home and in our communities, you have to take advantage of it. Like the African American have to reach out to the diaspora, the African continent have to reach out to the what they call them, the Caribbean, South American, everywhere you have allies, natural allies, you have to reach out to all of them, because we are one of the only people that don't necessarily work closely with our natural allies as well as we should, compared to other groups. Other groups, they just link up naturally. So those are the ways we can thwart it, and we have a lot of potential right now to be able to actually thwart it. First, prevent sanctions from on the countries that want to change their security posture in Africa. And one of the ways to do that is, that's where maybe the African Americans come in, because if America doesn't sign on to any regime of sanctions, nobody will. You see my point? China will not just start imposing sanctions because African countries are becoming more militarized. In the UK, it's not going to do it if America is not on their side. It tells you there is a big role for the African American community to play, because it's America that is the kingpin that goes after countries that are trying to break away from their control in terms of, and the truth is, I'm not even sure if Africa becomes industrialized, they necessarily need to break away from an alliance with America. It's just that America right now is kicking Africa when they could be working with America, because after all, America has 10 to 15% population of black people there. You see what I mean? So those black population can align America towards having an alliance with this in Africa. Thereby, both sides, is a win-win. It's not impossible to get to that point, but you have where the effect will really come in is where they can prevent America from going too hard on this in African nations when they try to increase their security. Because I fear that if Nigeria tries to do that now, just watch what happens. They will start criticizing Nigeria. What are you doing? You shouldn't do that. You should be putting that money in your education system, put it in your economy. But when they know full well that that is what we need to get out of the mess we are in. So that is my take. We should just work with all our natural allies, use our diplomatic covers where we can. Like in the case of the African American, and an example of this is, like, if they want to go for reparation, they can work with the African continent. Can you imagine if you have 54 countries backing your reparation call? You are more likely to get it, because America needs to trade with those countries. If they don't give the African American what they want, then those countries will cause problem for America too. So if the whole family starts coming together, it will be harder to break us apart, and it will be harder to forestall these. It will be easier, to forestall these so-called scramble for Africa. And definitely, it's very, very necessary that we stop it. If we don't stop it, we may not get out of it like the way we got away. I think, in a way, I would say Africa actually got away scot-free, really, from what happened previously. We suffered, but the American continent suffered even more. The Australian continent were completely almost wiped out. So you wonder how Africans were able to survive all the stuff that hit them. So this time we are not going to survive it. That's my point of making this, saying this. This time we will not survive it if China, America, Europe, all of them come together. Because eventually they will. If we don't get our act together, eventually they will. And if that happens, I don't see us getting out of it anytime soon. So we have to forestall these things with all our alliances we have all around the world. And that is how we can actually succeed. And it will involve less. That's the work we need to do individually will be a lot less then. And it may never even involve firing one gunshot at all. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Victoria.
Oh, hi, Diners. This is the first time I'm calling your show.
Okay.
I usually listen to you guys, and find your conversations and your discussions very interesting. Okay. Anyway, I am Ghanaian, but I'm currently in the UK, and hopefully be traveling back to Ghana soon. But what I would like to say is, I don't think we should be so pessimistic and say that Africa will be recolonized. Africa would not be recolonized. And why I say so is, there's a lot more happening underground than meets the eye. And with these people, when things are happening, we cannot be going around blatant, talking about whatever is going on, because That is where they used to take advantage of us. I mean, East Africa, I'm very impressed with because they're doing very well. They have really come together, and the way they are pushing, the dynamism between the way the countries are going in a few years down the line, they will do very well. West Africa, on the other hand, has become a basket case because of the French colony. What is the word for them? Francophones. They're basically a basket case. They can't seem to cut their ties with France. They're relying so much on the franc that they use there. How can you allow yourself that you don't have, as you call yourself independent, but you don't have any monetary independence? And a country like Nigeria that could also be leading, they are, look at how things are. If Nigeria stands up for West Africa, with the kind of population mass, the wealth they have in that country, West Africa will be strong. But Nigeria doesn't seem to have the right leaders that have Pan-African mindset that want to push forward. With the current Ghanaian government, love him or loathe him, he does have a Pan-African mindset. And he did desperately wanted to bring in the, is it eco, what the currency. But our neighbor, Ivoria, with the current president, did everything they can to stop it. After you've had a good discussion with the neighboring, your neighboring countries, and you plan to do something, your masters call you back to France, and then you go there and have a press conference with the French president, and then decided, oh, everything that you've all discussed, then you come back with a different, because his masters has given him orders, so he comes back, and then it's all the dynamism change, and Nigeria got angry and said, well, that's a bit, we're not having it, which was right. And that is what set us back. But if Africa, we get our act together, this is where sometimes I get very frustrated. When you have Black in the diaspora or the African Americans, you guys are very, very powerful people, but you don't see it. You come to Africa and all I hear on YouTube is moan and complain and this and that. It's not easy, of course. To do anything in Africa, it's not smooth or easy. But you have to realize that if we do not come together as people, and all we could do is forever complaining, we won't get anywhere. That is what West Africa is lacking at the moment. There is no cohesion in that place. Look at what is happening in Mali. Look at what is happening in Burkina. Currently, Burkina, the government only controls about 40% of their territory. The rest is being taken over by insurgents and Islamics or whatever they are, causing a whole heap of terrorism going on up there. And most of the people are rushing into Ghana because we're more or less like cousins, really, in terms of the tribal, the tribes that cross over borders. So the first place they come to is either Ghana or Ivoria, and it's basically destabilized. What is going on is destabilizing the whole place. Nobody can, all the governments, they cannot even think straight to get things done, what needs to be done. And I can tell you, there are several powerful countries that are behind all that. People don't want to talk about it. France have so much interest in that area that they would not let it go easily. But if African governments, especially in West Africa, do not stand strong for one another and try to bring some sort of order there, we will forever be going around in circles. Because if the way East Africa is going, you give it a few years, they'll become so powerful, you'll be surprised. So we shouldn't be so despondent that everything in Africa is bad and it's all this, that, and the other, and it's not going. No, it's not like that. You need to look underneath. You need to look behind the headlines. You need to look behind all that is going on up front. And Ghana at the moment is doing. There's so many things that Ghana is doing now I don't want to discuss it on everything you can see on the social media. And because of that, Ghana is under attack. And the weakest thing that they could get Ghana on is the currency. Ghana has discovered so many mineral resources now in the past few years. It's shocking. And the current president is saying, if we Africans, Ghanaians or Africans or Black people cannot come together with investment to develop it or to exploit it or whatever, let it stay there. He's not giving it out to anybody to come and exploit us anymore. Recently, there was a company that they make alcohol, beverages and stuff, and they needed to build a glass factory. They had one before that's been obsolete, not been used, and they wanted to revamp it and build it. They went around looking for investment. Nobody, no Black people will come in with the money they need. Eventually, they went to America. They found another glass company in America, and they came in. They came and looked at the place, and they saw the material they have. They were shocked. They said, come on, you guys, the material you have here is better quality than anything we've seen. And this is a glass company making bottles. So what they plan to do, the company that came in from America, they are white people, by the way, white company, they told them, listen, double it. Make it, not 2 times, 3 times what you plan to do, because we can export about 80% of what we make here. You guys need about 20-30% to use for whatever you need in the country. The rest we would export. And this is where you will need the Blacks in the diaspora to come in, particularly you African Americans that you're always complaining about Africa. Why? You need to come in there. You guys have the resources. You have the know-how, and you have been exposed to so many things which many Africans haven't. And if sorry, I'm ranting a bit, but I'll leave it here and let you guys continue. Thank you, Diners.
You're welcome. Kasha Zulu, go ahead, Kasha. Kasha, you gotta mute yourself.
Muted.
Kasha Zulu. Go ahead, 2-9. You're pass it to Larry.
Yeah, I think what she's saying does make sense on so many levels. However, she has to understand that part of this problem is a campaign of sabotage of the continent. And because if I was the one on the other side of the ledger, I would be doing the same to sabotage the continent so that I can exploit as much resources as I want. It's up to us. I can't sit here and say because they are evil. They are not evil. They are doing what they are supposed to do for their own people.
No, they're not. I wouldn't. Sorry, I wouldn't say anybody's evil. They're only doing what they're doing to look after their interests. What are we doing? What are we doing? They're looking after their interests. Simple.
Yeah, but you see, one of the things you notice about West African countries, even, you rarely see them working openly together. Sometimes you see them, they come together at ECOWAS and all the rest. Like Ghana president would just go talk as if Ghana exists outside West Africa. Sierra Leone will talk as if Sierra Leone exists outside West Africa. Nigeria will talk as if they are completely different from West Africa. They don't appear to be working together. Like on that echo matter that you raised, if there had been that stuff was on the public space and everybody was talking about it and then everybody was on the same page, it would be harder for that Ivorian president to be able to sabotage it. Ouattara to sabotage it. It would be harder because everybody would see him as a sellout in the entire West Africa. So these are the things, the way they are operating away from the people. There's a division between the leaders, separation between the leaders and their people. The same thing with the African Union. On paper, they seem to be doing the right things. ECOWAS is putting together a style force. North Africa is doing the same. All parts of Africa, they are putting together a standby force. Buhari signed it into the funding for it, that they should create a counterterrorism force in Africa. So it appears they are doing that, but it's separated from people, so that when something goes wrong or is hijacked, people are not aware. And I don't know whether this is deliberate that they are doing it like that, or is because they are required to not make that obvious that they are doing these things. That's why they act as if they are scared, or they are doing it under the table kind of approach. I don't understand it, because there's nothing to hide from saying, you know what, we are creating a standby force to protect our area. There's nothing to hide that the entire African continent needs a counterterrorism force that is going to be robust and defend the continent. But they act as if they're hiding under the table when they talk about these things.
Sorry to cut in there. Not just, don't even make it the whole of the African continent, just make it regional. I mean, like East Africa now, they're doing so well. You know, recently when I had an issue where some terrorists were trying to take over Mozambique, some area in Mozambique where there's a lot of huge natural gas discovery there. They got together, Uganda, Rwanda, and I think Kenya or something. They got together and they pushed them out. Why can't we do the same in West Africa? You know, West Africa still doesn't have a strong military force where this bandit of terrorists causing so much trouble up in the Sahel. It's making the whole area unstable. I mean, look, I just told you that Burkina, they're only controlling about 30 to 40% of their landmass. Just the ones near the border to Ghana and Ivoria. Now, recently, they have several attacks coming to their capital, you know, and that capital is very close to Ghana. We've had a few incursions coming from Burkina, these bandits, and the Ghanaian army pushed them out. But look at Burkina, it's doing what they want, bringing in these, oh God, you carry on.
That is what you get when you have 6,000 people in a country the size of almost the size of United Kingdom. When you have 6,000 soldiers in a country the size of, that's what you get. You don't control the territory. And how these our African leaders get away with these things, I don't know. I really wish the people understand the structure of nations, how nations are actually founded, because our countries are not behaving like nations. They are behaving like governments that are running caretaker government, awaiting their masters to come and tell them what to do. Because clearly you can't have 6,000 soldiers in a country that size. That's why you can't control the country. But I am thankfully the government now has decided to recruit 50,000 soldiers. I don't know how many they've actually trained up yet, but they are moving in the right direction now, because I can't even believe that they have 6,000 something. Ghana right now that we are talking about has 10,000 soldiers for a population of 30 something million. How is that exactly? How is that a nation? That is like kindergarten. You can't run a country like that. Yeah. Tomorrow, Islamic militant come in and we are surprised that they're running territory.
Well, you know, underneath they are worried. They are worried. So now, you know, they are very worried because we've had 2 incursions that where the people just decided they came on their bikes and then motorbikes and then ran into the country. They managed to push them off. But if anything major happening in Burkina now, we're in trouble. Up north, anyway.
True. It's very, very true. And this is why we shouldn't, I don't see, all I'm saying is that in the context of Nigeria, the debate I've been having with them, I've been telling it, I've been saying it almost every time I open my mouth. We have to change our security posture. We have to change our security posture. And our Nigerian president that is coming to office right now, not say coming to office, potentially coming to office, 2 of them, at least 2 to 3 of them, are already saying that they're going to increase the size of the military from 100,000 to 1 million. That is almost 10 times increment. So is Ghana looking at doing that? No, Ghana is not even talking about that at all. So it tells you that there's something still wrong with the way we are thinking about it. And believe you me, sister, I'm telling you this. If your president doesn't tell you your security forces, your military needs to be increased, that guy is still a traitor. He's still selling you out. Because that is not a healthy state for any nation to be.
No. I mean, currently, you know, we have economic situation whereby we're going to IMF, and there's a employment freeze in parts of the conditionalities that they give in Ghana. So they cannot even recruit employment freeze, government employment, not private government.
Oh my God! You see, this is how they pin us down.
Let's pass it up. Kasha Zulu, unmute yourself.
Peace. Thanks.
Employment freeze. That's interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show, Dynast. This is a good topic. I don't agree with the sister saying that Africa won't be colonized. I believe that Africa is currently being recolonized as we speak.
No, it's not. No. Don't lie that. It is not.
All right.
No.
Can I just get my my point out, then we could like maybe have some dialogue. But it's being colonized as we speak. You know, foreign people, like we say the Chinese and also the Russians. Now, the Chinese, they are into illegal and legal colonization. So they are coming with loans and saying, hey, take this loan. That is the legal form of colonization, what you would say. And they're also illegally colonizing by marrying, or not marrying, but having children with like a lot of Ghanaians in Ghana. And those children now are able to obtain land because they're citizens in Ghana. So the Chinese, they're also overfishing the rivers, not the rivers, the oceans, the coast, and they're also polluting the rivers and the streams with a lot of their illegal mining activities. So this kind of naive talk that, oh, it's not going to be colonized again, that allowed it to get colonized the first time, and you know, we're seeing it being colonized again. And these leaders like Nana in Ghana, these leaders don't have Africa's best interest at heart. They really only care about their pockets. Nana, he care about flying to Europe every other Tuesday to watch a football game, and he's
That's
spending the
not true.
tax,
Come on,
and he's
come
spending the
on. Now let's be
taxpayers'
serious. Now
dollars
that is
doing
not
so.
true.
Oh, okay.
That
If
is
it's
not
not
true.
true, why are Ghanaians saying this?
No. Which Ghanaian saying that now come fly over to Europe to watch football? That is not true. He does fly over to around the world a bit, but not to watch football. So please,
Nana flies to
let's be
Europe to watch
realistic there.
football matches. He
No,
flies
that
to
is not
England to
true.
watch football games.
When was you in Ghana?
Why wasn't I in
When was the
Ghana?
last time were you in Ghana?
I've never been to Ghana.
So why do you say that? I've been into Ghana. I mean,
I
I just came back
understand that.
and
Listen,
I'm
my
going
wife
back
is
soon.
okay, Mel. My wife is Ghanaian. My father-in-law
It
is
doesn't
Ghanaian.
matter whether she's Ghanaian or not. What she's telling, the
Okay.
information she's giving you is not correct.
Okay, so
What
the
makes you
information
think
you're
your
giving me is correct,
information
right?
is correct? What makes you think
Well,
your
No,
hold on,
listen.
So the
hold on,
information you're giving me is correct, right?
No. I go to
Victoria,
Ghana regular.
Hold on, Victoria. Kasha Zulu, do you have any proof that the president
Exactly.
just put the link or supply some proof that he flies to watch football?
Good point.
Every weekend, just provide the proof.
Now it may not be every weekend, Dynast.
But what was your statement?
My point is he's spending taxpayers' dollars. My point is the presidents of Africa, they're there for their own personal interests. They're there for their own
No, because
pockets.
send me the proof that he frequents a lot of, I guess, was it Premier League, Larry? What's it called in Manchester United game, whatever.
Yes, it's the Premier League in England.
Okay, so what do you mean send you the proof? Do you need me to send you a picture of him at a football game?
I mean, if they're claiming that he's at these games, I'm pretty sure since he's the president that there would be photo ops and pictures or links. I mean, there has to be something.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures.
Just provide. Just we need a chance. Put the link in the chat room.
For sure.
Sorry, if I could just come in and correct a few things. I'm not saying this government is perfect. Far from it. But in terms of, that's what I say. There's a lot of things that I know that I don't want to put it out on social media. That doesn't mean that everything he's doing is correct. But to make a blanket statement, oh, he's flying off to watch football, that's not right. We shouldn't be doing things like that. When you guys are having a debate and talking about issues, what we should do is try and be accurate as we can. Nana is not doing that. Nana may have his issues. Some people say that he's messed up the economy a little bit. It's true, because they did they had a very much an ambitious plan when they came in, and they were just spending, and then COVID hit, and then a lot of things have gone wrong in a way. That's what's ended us back in IMF. But even with that condition going into the IMF, it's not as dire as in some places it is. But I mean, I wish, as a Ghanaian, I was very disappointed that we ended up going to IMF. I don't want us to go. I didn't want us because the IMF, to be honest, those institutions are not set up to help Africans. They're not.
So why did the
set up to
Africans
help.
keep on going back to them? Why did
Hold
the
on.
Africans keep on
Let me
going
just
back
add
to them?
this thing quickly.
Let me finish. Let me just
No,
finish.
you're gonna speak. I'm not taking long. I think what you said there, you may not realize what you dropped. I've been looking for that information a long time. Employment freeze is a key term. And if that employment free means you can increase your military size, you can't do anything. And this may be what is plaguing many African countries that are taking IMF loans. Thank you.
So
Okay.
The thing that I said when I first came on, Dynast, I said to you that the scramble has still been going on. If you want to stop the scramble, first thing, you need to have a powerful military. We don't. Two, the Americans have military bases all over Africa. They're using African countries.
Where? Come on. America have
they're
a few
using
military
Africa as a
bases in
staging
Africa.
point to initiate invasions. I gave you the example of Djibouti having lots of countries having their military bases there. Another way, if African countries want to stop the scramble,
Larry, let me correct you there. The only countries that don't have, Larry, let me just correct you quickly. No, let me just correct you quickly.
What they're doing is
the only countries that don't have military base. Let me just say something to you now. Can you hear me?
Well. So
Larry, can you hear me?
The African
Let him finish, Nigel.
You can't hear me. You can't hear me.
The African countries.
Larry, you got to repeat yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dynast.
Larry, repeat yourself because two Nigels interrupted you. I couldn't even hear you. I lost you at Djibouti. If you want to just give us a
thanks. What I was saying is one of the ways that the African countries need to stop the scramble is to be empowered. One of the ways they're empowered is having a powerful military. The other way is
so,
to make
Larry,
sure that
are you saying that?
I want to hear a Larry. Larry, damn.
And Larry doesn't hear people when people are talking. That's the problem.
I want to hear the guy. Start again.
Thank you very much,
like I'm in kindergarten, like I'm a kindergarten teacher.
I know it's quite embarrassing. They feel the need to keep trying to talk over me. Yeah, I showed them respect and I kept quiet when they spoke. Like as I was saying, in order for those African countries to stop the scramble, they need to have powerful militaries. They have to stop the Westerners from creating military bases in their country. And the other thing they need to do is they need to get rid of the debt that they owe. They owe foreign debt. They are consistently going to the World Bank, to the IMF, and other financial institutions to borrow money, which they don't seem to be able to pay off. They spend more time paying off debt. This prevents them from concentrating on public infrastructure in their countries. So until they get rid of that, and then there's the currency thing. If you still have West African countries using CFA, French currency, how can you say you're independent? The scramble is still going on. And plus, I've mentioned to you numerous times, all those multinational corporations in Africa digging up the resources who've been given the license to do it by the governments. Organizations like Glencore, organizations like Anglo-American. If you want to stop the scramble, you need to be able to control those multinationals. Till then, the scramble is still going on.
One second. OB in the queue. I need you to turn your camera on so I can see who you are first. OB, before I bring you on, I need you to turn your camera on so I can see who you are. Okay. All right, cool. You can turn your camera back off. All right, go ahead, tonight.
Just wanted to add, he said that Djibouti has many military bases. The only countries that don't have military bases in Djibouti is African countries. And that country has been turned to a military base supermarket whereby everybody just comes, foreigners, and they just allow anybody to create a military base there. And I agree with Kashitatulu to an extent that Africa is in the process of actually being recolonized physically, not financially. I think we are already to an extent colonized. We have talked about the francophone currency, and now many of our countries, our currencies are the dollar, which means whenever the dollar they decide to print any money, our currency value just drops like a stone. So I agree with Larry. The military is the pathway out, but the problem now is that from what Victoria said, that IMF loan comes with that condition that talks about recruitment freeze, and that is a diabolical condition. And if that is present in all African, most of our loans, that is why our militaries, we don't have a military, really. So you're basically halting the ability to employ people, which means you can recruit soldiers more easily. And it's something that we really need to investigate. I will be looking more closely into that, because I've always been wondering, how do they do this? You need to understand the mechanism that they use to keep African countries so underfunded. And part of it, from what this lady just said about Ghana, is employment freeze. If Ghana president wants to increase his loan, his now, he has to break that that loan agreement to do that.
I dropped that link for you too, Dynast.
Okay, go ahead, Victoria, and pass it to OB.
No, I was going to say that, sorry, is it O'Leary? I wasn't trying to be rude, or, I mean, I like to deal with facts, you know, and something if I don't have, and if somebody says something, I'll do my checking, a little bit of research to get my facts. If I don't have it and people just throwing things out, it bothers me. So would you say that Nigeria is being recolonized?
I would say that
Is it O'Leary?
Yes, I would say that Nigeria, as well as most African countries, never stopped being colonized. Colonization changed.
On what basis?
So, and I'll tell you on the basis, because when you think of colonization, you think of it in the traditional sense of the British bringing their soldiers in and having
no. Come on. There. Give me a little bit of credit, please.
Okay, so then if you understand that, then you will understand that destroying a country through foreign debt is a form of colonization, because as has been pointed out, you are preventing them from improving their public infrastructure, from improving their military deliberately. So when you have that there, that's still colonization. Two, when you're forcing African countries to use currency which is determined by the French, then that's another form of colonization. When those African countries are then having to pay foreign debt in US dollars, that is a form of colonization. It's foreign currency. It's not their own currency. Plus, if you look at most African countries, the value of their currency compared to the dollar is incredibly low. That works in the benefit of the West. They can continue to financially colonize Africa, hold you to task. So I understand when Dynasty is being optimistic about the things China is doing, but China isn't doing it for free. It's all based on being able to pay them for what they're doing. So the African countries, their economies need to be doing well, because if they're struggling, they're going to be in debt to China. So that's another form of colonization. It's financial colonization. So, and I said to Dynasty right at the start, we talked about Iraq, Afghanistan. America just marched in with their military. If America decided to march into Nigeria with their military, can Nigeria stop America? No. If Britain decided
possibly no, but why would America?
Well, we can resist them like Afghanistan did.
Oh yeah, we can resist.
What would America have to go and say, I'm going to be marching into Nigeria? What would the purpose? What would America have to say that?
America can come up with anything. How do we know this? We look at their history. America came up with a reason to go into the Philippines in 1948. They came up with a reason
America
to go
has
into
the power
Korea.
to do anything.
They came up with a reason to go into Korea in the 50s. They came up with a reason to go into Vietnam in the 60s and 70s. They came up with a reason to go into Grenada in the 80s. They came up with a reason to go into Vietnam. So they can come up with a reason whatever they want.
But I would like to my point, what America does not have any reason now to come into any African country.
Did you not hear this? Did you not hear the start of what Dynast was saying when Dynast was reading the information about China's involvement?
I'm saying,
I'm trying to hear Larry. Good. Go ahead, Larry. Go ahead. I'm trying to hear.
Thank you. As Dynast was reading to us at the beginning, America was already showing that they were unhappy with China's involvement. They didn't like the fact that China was getting involved with African countries, helping to build the infrastructure. And already I got the sense from what Dynast was reading that the propaganda from America might start, where they're going to start demonizing China. And eventually they're going to look to some of these African countries to say, listen, Are you going to come with us, or are you going to stick with the Chinese? And if the African countries decide to stick with the Chinese, maybe from past experience, maybe America might find a way to like disrupt things in that African country. That's all I'm saying. If the Americans are unhappy with you, the Americans aren't just going to go away. We know that historically. And he's already
I tell you something, historically, the country that'd be more devastating to Africa is France. Do you know that? Historically.
Yeah, but that proves my point.
Listen, let me finish.
They haven't gone away.
Let me finish. It's not the CNA. They have killed more African leaders. They have helped assassinate more African leaders than America. You know that?
You're just proving my point. Yeah, I know that.
No, so I don't want us to go through this motion of, oh, the America is a very powerful country. Militarily, they're the strongest currently. Nobody can beat them. America can walk into any country in Africa and take it over. It's going to cause a lot of death, but they can. I'm not doubting that they can't. What I'm saying is, what is the cause? What will be the purpose for America to do that, though? It won't serve their interest in the long run to do it.
Did you not hear what I told you?
That's what I believe, anyway.
That Dynast read to us. That Americans do not like...
Okay, can you ask her why it doesn't serve America's interest in the long run?
No, you can ask yourself.
In the long run...
Let OB's been waiting. Go ahead, OB.
What's up, y'all? Thanks, Dynast. Actually, speaking right to what Hilary's talking about and just kind of questioning the stance that Victoria's taken, I think 2 or 3 years ago, there were like 4 Americans who were killed in Niger. So those are American soldiers. So why are American soldiers in Niger? I'll ask you that, Victoria. And why were they killed?
I think it was Mali. It was Mali.
No, it was in Niger.
It was
Niger.
It was Niger.
Nigeria, right. Niger, or which one?
Niger. Same thing.
Yeah, above Nigeria.
Okay.
4 American
I don't know what is
reports.
happening in. I know a bit about what's happening in Mali and Burkina. I take more interest in there, so I really kind of say what is really going on in Niger. I know a bit about what's going on in northern Nigeria, but I cannot say much about Niger because I don't know what is going on there. To be honest, I have not read much about it.
Okay, so you said Africa will not be colonized. If there's areas in Africa that you don't know anything about, how do you know that Africa?
But that's why I stuck to the areas that I knew. I was talking about Ghana.
Yeah,
that's why I stuck to the areas that I knew.
The reason why I brought up Niger is just to question, Victoria, like the America has soldiers in many different parts of the world, especially in the continent of Africa. So they have interests there. And then sometimes they have interests that are based on helping out the Europeans, because to some degree, Europe sees Africa the way America sees South America and Central America. But they don't have the military power to do what America can do on this side. So sometimes America helps them out, which is what happened with Libya. Libya happened because France and Italy wanted to deal with Gaddafi, but America has the power to do it. So they, being allies, America helped them out. But I do like the points that Niger and Hilary brought up. Yeah, there's a lot of possibility for recolonization, and in many ways, we are being recolonized, and it can happen in many forms. But the other thing that can happen, because the world is changing, is that the West and the East are talking about possibly separating, and so the world could become more dangerous if it turns out that the U.S. kind of closes shop and doesn't really go out in the world anymore, and if China doesn't trade with the West like that, and they trade with mainly the East, and the world gets separated. And then what happens if some people, like the reason why there are not empires in the world now, like there was in the colonial era, is because of the United States. So if the United States decides not to police the world like it's been doing for the last 80 years, then other countries can decide to try to have empires again. And in Europe, they've already talked about this. In Germany and Italy and France, they've talked about maybe we should go back to Africa and have different relations. This is why the UK is talking about the Commonwealth again. But all of these things are pretext for coming into your country controlling an industry here or there, controlling a resource here or there, buying your politicians, having military agreements, and then doing exercises in your country. So a lot of things can happen. And then the other thing is there are also second-rate powers in the world that have their eyes on Africa. Turkey has interest in Africa. Turkey wants to control Libya. Turkey wants to control Somalia. But we don't hear about these things. So we also have to realize our militaries in our countries are much, much, much weaker than the other countries. So if anybody just decides to do something to our countries and actually makes an effort, that can have bad consequences for us. So I'll just start there.
I got a question for Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
What curriculum do they use in the school systems in Ghana?
Currently, they're revamping and changing it, but in the past, we've used sort of a British educational system, really, but it's changing now.
All right, so you said currently in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, so currently
in the past,
the British.
Yeah. No, it's not now. They've brought in a new curriculum now.
So they got a
that
new
is more.
curriculum.
It's
They're not using
more
the British curriculum no
Ghana
more?
centered. Huh?
They're not using the
The
British
what?
curriculum no more?
No. I mean, I think in the past year, 2 years, they've sort of completely overhauled the educational system. So that is gone now. They having more Africa and Ghana based, more African centered education. We also, I mean, they sort of. A lot of things being made compulsory, whereby they're hoping that before a Ghanaian child will leave school, apart from the English that they're using as a using as a instruction. What is it? That word I can't get it out of my head. They also want Ghanaian. They want to say when a child starts school, they'll be using their mother tongue. So it could be any Ewa, Akan, Ewa, Dagbani, and all that. They'll use that from the beginning and eventually introduce.
So they let you speak tree in school now, and they let you grow your hair out.
Oh,
right?
yes, now, yes. There's even exams now. That's been there for a while. There's even exams where you have to sit now. Now it's even been made compulsory. You have to sit at least 1 or 2
Let me also
Ghanaian
bring up
indigenous
this.
language.
Let me bring up this point about
Let me pass it to Yed because he's been waiting. Go ahead,
all
Yed.
right.
Unmute yourself, Yed.
All right. Greetings, Dynast, to
Yes, sir.
Niger, and everybody on the panel.
Oh boy.
Happy New Year.
Try to
Niger,
be what? Just hoping. Just go ahead.
Okay. So, a couple of things. I took some points down. First of all, about the currency. You have to understand what happened in the 20th century with the World Bank, the IMF, and the structural adjustment programs that made all the social amenities, financing basically disappear. And then, the global South had to start paying interest on all the loans in dollars because it took the loans in dollars. So that is one thing. So even when it comes to education and overhauling the academic curriculums, basically all of that disappeared in the 20th century. So 1 or 2 countries are overhauling their academic curriculums, but like for instance in West Africa, just hearing for the first time Victoria talking about Ghana, but there's what they call the West African African Examination
Exam,
Council,
the exam,
which is
Examination
WIEC.
Council.
Yeah, which is WIEC. And it's the same colonial academic curriculum. So those are certainly things that we're just finishing the first 2 decades of the 21st century. More people are being more enlightened. There's now the internet and things like that. So eventually they'll get around to it. I think right now the focus of the leaders is more integration and doing more business amongst each other. And that will create more value on, more value of using our natural resources for ourselves first. Now, with regards to Niger, Nigeria practically right now basically is surrounded by NATO bases. In Niger, there is a drone base in Niger for NATO. What happened with the killings of the American soldiers is because there was to fight Boko Haram, there was a multinational joint force that had to be created. And because all our neighbors are French, they actually had, after the Nigerian president at the time, His Excellency Goodluck Ibele Jonathan, was talking to his counterparts in all these francophone countries that is surrounding Nigeria, and they had to go to Paris for them to get a nod to implement that. And so that involved French, America, and NATO troops also trying to combat terrorists, which we all know is as good as worthless, right? So, because the terrorism just increases, really. Because obviously in Niger, there is uranium, high-grade uranium in Niger. So obviously illegal mining of uranium is happening as well. Now, with regards to America invading the African continent, I mean, that's like, wow. I mean, as much as the technological advancement of African militaries is not at par with China, Russia, or the United States of America, or even the EU, right? An invasion into the African continent, colonization of the African continent in the 21st century, they would not be able to achieve great success, because there is one when you're fighting insurgency and there is internal politics. It's another ball game when it's an invasion of the continent and all the leaders are saying, hey, they're invading us simultaneously, and they're forging their militaries together to fight off this invasion.
What militaries? They don't have militaries.
Can I finish? Because I didn't interrupt you. That's very rude and disrespectful.
I'm just asking you a question. You can answer that.
That's
What
very rude and
militaries?
disrespectful, and I would not want you to repeat that again. Now, having said that, there's already the African Standby Forces that has been training for a while. It's not very active, but they have had that introduction and they're training for a while now. And there's always talks of, making it more efficient, more active. And that is for the entire continent. Like every region actually puts military forces together. Then with regards to China, you can't use the word colonizing Africa in the same sentence with China and its activities with African countries, be it the Chinese shark loans or exploitations of mineral resources and things like that, because of two things. It's not a colonization because, hey, everybody came. China broke a monopoly by the West. The African leaders who were able to negotiate the deals, if they had been trying to negotiate the deals with the West for like 10, 20 years, the West actually said it doesn't finance infrastructure projects on the African continent. That was all through the 20th century. So China comes and says, hey, we will finance infrastructure. They were just happy to even have infrastructure being built. That's the key thing. And that broke that monopoly, which actually eventually China has also learned from its mistakes, because everything as well, you have to put that into context. It's also new for China. For the last 20 years, it's also, they have learned from some of their mistakes that along the way and things like that. China is not going to be the new colonizer of the African continent. In fact, the African continent's debt profile to China is less than 10%. These are the facts. These are the numbers. It's the people with the 90% debt that are actually pushing the propaganda that China is recolonizing the African continent, which is absurd. However, the African continent...
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you for what you just said.
Yes, you're welcome. So, okay, so this is the facts. The first business model of the African continent was the Maafa, the slave trade, and and mercantilism. The second business model has been the Chinese shark loans. Now, at 1st of January 2021, the African continent introduced the third business model of the African continent, which is by Africans, called the African Continental Free Trade Agreement Area, whereby it specifically is an African Union program for more integration amongst African countries to trade more amongst African countries and to use the natural resources of the African continent to benefit Africans first before the rest of the world. So that just started. It's now 2 years going. It's just like the EU. The EU took decades. So I believe with, more efficiency, and obviously the African leaders are keenly pushing for more integration amongst themselves. You can hear about the ECOWAS, even though there was this whole thing about CFA changing to France, disrupting that. But you can see in East Africa, they're already talking about a single currency there as well. And that all those things will come to play. There'll be several regional currencies that will come up between now and 2030 on the African continent, and that would also bring backed currencies with natural resources, obviously, as well, including the more trade amongst Africans. And so I think, it's everybody has the right to be a bit skeptical, a bit scared, but we need to also be pragmatic about what's on the ground and what is being implemented by the leaders on the African continent, and obviously be wary of other regions, other countries around the world, which will be a balanced view on the realities in the 21st century of the African continent. With that, I yield the mic. Thank you.
Okay, the reason why we are not successful as African people is because so many of us are unrealistic. We don't look at the real situations. We overplay how much strength we have. Our countries are very weak. We're very, very weak.
Do you have any
just because you have?
or do
let me
you
finish.
have
See. Listen. Let him talk. Come on.
Do you know why I'm interrupting him right now? Is because he's indirectly insulting what I
I'm not insulting.
And
you.
I meant wait.
No. He's not indirectly. Just let him talk. No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Say something. Let me say
Let
something.
him talk.
No, you gotta let him talk. He's like
you can't make.
You spoke for about 10 minutes yet. Come on, man. Come on.
You gotta let the guy finish. Go ahead, Obi.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I'm just saying real quick. We overplay our hand a lot. We got to be realistic. We have to look at the facts as well, but we also have to look at, just because as a person you have an initiative doesn't mean other people don't have initiatives. Doesn't mean that their initiatives are not stronger than yours. Doesn't mean their capability to exact their initiative is not stronger than yours. People have plans for our people and for our continent that are not
exactly
us. And they're stronger than us right now. Much, much stronger. And we have to be real about that.
I agree with that. I think that's why I say, if I was the one on the other side of the fence, you have to put yourself in their position. With all the resources, your military and everything you have at your disposal, what would you do if you find some African trying to do that is not in your interest? You're going to do a lot. You have a lot of tools to forestall whatever they are trying to do. But something I want to highlight that is not necessarily as simple, that is also to an extent is strength. Because we do have a greater diaspora around the world, and if you look at America now, and I think this is an opportunity that we as a people have, America, because of the presence of 50 million plus the African diaspora that God knows how many they are now, and they are increasing in number every time. If they can this will nudge America in the right direction. America would not be as hostile to Africa as most people would fear. And secondly, America would not want to invade Africa with a force that is 20% or maybe even more of African American, and if you include the Hispanics, 50% minority groups. And because that is not a very coherent thing to go and do, because you're invading a continent that is of black people. It's like America invading a European country. You know, it's very, very tricky to do that, except European countries are fighting themselves. Then you go and back one European country like they are doing in Ukraine right now. If America goes on the ground with white forces going to attack European country, it could be a problem. You see what I mean? So that is something that we have to keep in mind, that is why America, if you look at Africa, America doesn't go in physically to attack African countries like the way they do with Afghanistan, Iraq, and some other countries they've been to physically present with soldiers on the ground, because they understand that a lot of them are African Americans that are going to be carrying those guns and they don't want it in hands. So, and that is a strength that I think the African American community don't realize yet. They don't realize the strength they have to shape the future of the continent and their own fate too in the process. Because if the continent is strong, the African American community is a lot stronger for it. Just like the Jewish lobby is strong in the US of the strength of Israel. So I just thought I should highlight that.
To Niger, check this out. You're right about that, but look at this as well. If there's a war between the United States and China, the United States will go to Africa because they want to stop the Chinese from having resource access. People think that, you know, the Chinese are doing business with you because they need access to resources. They might be nice about it. But if there's a war because Chinese are in a weak position, they need to be able to get resources, and they go to war with the US will go to Africa to prevent them from getting resources that they have deals with in Africa right now.
Yeah, one would think that would sound very easy. Dynast, have you seen the link that Kashta put in there for you? It has to do with some guy using a private jet.
I saw it in here. It's just, I guess he took a private jet to attend meetings in Europe.
Is it the Ghana president?
Yeah, but he went to no. So he went from Accra to France, France to Guyana, Guyana to Germany, Germany to France, France to Belgium, Belgium to UK, UK back to Ghana.
But he didn't go and watch
and
football.
What's that got to do with watching soccer, though?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say.
That was the other guy saying.
Okay, Dennis, can I make my contribution, please?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, you know, I like the one sister. I think she's with a British accent. She was talking about sticking to facts. You know what? I'm just the same, man. I want to stick to facts. Okay. So first things first. Okay. America has got only one base in Africa. Okay, that's AFRICOM. About 4,000 guys in Africa, Djibouti. All right. Yes, they're building a drone thing in Niger, but they have only one permanent base. And those guys were killed in Niger. Those are special ops guys that were killed in Niger. Now, when China also is building, it's got a base in Djibouti now. Because why? Because of the Suez Canal, which is where most of the trade passes through. So they both have an interest being around there, right? Force projection. China is too far from Africa. Yes, they have a lot of interest in Africa. So they're gonna have they want to have troops on the ground. Now, in terms of colonization again and others, this is all a bunch of hogwash. You know, Africa, what the African leaders need to do is they need to balance the books. The World Bank offers loans for infrastructure projects, okay? The IMF, it offers loans for balance of payment support, okay? If those don't understand simple economics, balance of payments refers to a country, you've got inflows, the taxes that you can take in, and all the payments that you make, and then if you don't balance that, then there's an issue, right? So if you have a surplus, you're good. You can spend that on development and all other goals. If you have a deficit, then you have to go out to borrow. That's what the IMF is for. Now, let me say something again that most people might not get. The biggest borrower of the IMF, the World Bank, is China and India. Those guys, they're over almost 2 trillion each. 2 trillion. You're talking about 5, 6, 10 billion from us, some small African countries, and you make it look like it's something. These guys are borrowing so much money from the IMF and World Bank, and they're developing their countries. And here we see talking about, getting loans will be recolonized, as if loans are a bad thing. But loans are a bad thing if you take them to drink. If you're using the loans for the proper reasons, which is to finance infrastructure projects so that there's commerce moves easier in your country, it is a good thing. The problem is,
what if they ask you not to recruit soldiers?
Wait. It's too many hypotheticals and people who don't understand proper economics talking about economics and how countries can move forward when people don't have a clue. I mean,
what if they ask you not to recruit your military from it?
No, we're not talking about the military. You know what, Turaja? You always go back to the military.
If you had listened to the lady, she said that there was a recruitment freeze as condition of the loan.
But wait, I'm not speaking.
Sorry, let me just
correct that. Not everything has to do with the military. We have to manage our economies better.
And besides, there are at least five military bases of the US in Africa, not one.
Okay, give us the countries. Yeah, that's a lie. That's a lie. Tell us.
There is Djibouti. There is Kenya. There is Niger Republic. There is Egypt. Let me give you the names, the base names. Okay, yes. Let me give you their name. The one in Djibouti is Luminia.
Don't tell me.
Yeah. Let me give you the one. Let me give you the one in Kenya then. Manda Bay in Kenya. What? Manda Bay in Kenya. Yes. Okay. Hold on. Don't choke now. I'm giving you the name now. That of the one in Egypt is MFO South Camp in Egypt. Then the Cameroon is called Contingency Location Jarua. I don't know how to pronounce the word. So these are military bases located in Africa. So
what did Nucci mean when he said they didn't exist? If you've got the names of them, why would he say they don't exist?
I don't know. He just maybe he got it wrong.
Because all I know is about maybe there might be some troops doing some training, but I don't know about having military bases in Kenya. But hey, maybe some Kenyans can attest, and I'll check that. But anyway, I'll check that. I can give it a, but I was more interested about the loans. And I mean, countries are free to get loans. We just have to use them wisely, and that's what's important. And there's this thing about we might be recolonized. Nothing like that is going to happen again. Why would the US come to attack?
False. Why? Because I would do the same thing if I wasn't.
You just answered the question.
The reason why there's a base in Djibouti is because the Western House is full of terrorists, the jihadists,
and you pay the loans back, then there's no problem. That's what you said, Muchi. You told us that if you take loans and you pay the loans, there's no problem.
Yeah, but the African countries are paying their loans back.
When you don't pay the loans, it's called a default. What don't you get? It's called a default. You don't get more loans.
And then what happens?
What happens? Argentina is defaulted on loans. Many countries have defaulted on loans.
What happens?
Was Argentina attacked because they didn't pay their loans?
Listen.
Nobody said anything about being attacked. Answer the question. You told us.
You default. I mean, we're asking me a basic question. What happens if you don't pay back your loan yourself?
It's a simple question I'm asking.
What happens if you don't pay back a loan? Your credit score, your credit history, whatever metric goes down. Your interest rates, if you have to seek loans on some other markets to be high, you've got junk status.
So your credit score goes down, as you said. Your credit goes down. Where do you then get the money to improve?
You don't. Why would you want somebody to give you more money if you can't pay back your existing loans?
Okay, so how do you improve the public infrastructure in your country if you don't have capital?
Listen, O'Leary,
this is just circular. What you're talking about, like
it's not circular.
What's your point?
What
are you trying to get? I don't understand.
Your infrastructure. It's very simple. If you want to build roads, bridges,
there's Africa Development Bank and there's the World Bank. Those are for infrastructure projects.
Did you not hear what you said? You said if you cannot pay the loans, you default. So then I'm asking you, once you've defaulted, where do you get the capital to
that's the problem of that country.
Come on, man. You just rely on your taxation. Exactly. So if you don't get enough taxation, you don't develop. You just stay where you are.
You're not listening to what you're saying. If you're having to go to borrow money in the first place, it means that the amount of money you're getting from taxation is not enough. And
no, that's not as simple as that. No.
Muchi has pointed out to us, if you can't pay your loans back, back.
Larry, this has happened on the African. Wait 1 second. This has happened on the African continent before. In the 20th century.
Let me say one thing, Ellery.
Wait. Before you go, in the 20th century, majority of African countries defaulted on their loans with the IMF and the World Bank, the London and the Paris clubs, right? So now China comes and then China basically writes it off. There's always going to basically what happened is the breaking of the monopoly of the West in the 21st century also had to do with credit ratings. So therefore, they were saying, oh, these people are they've defaulted on their loans, so they can't get more loans. But China came in and said, hey, I'm going to break this. I'm going to do this infrastructure because the West was saying, oh, they've defaulted on their loans. They can't, and they're not interested in financing.
There's something called debt restructuring. There's something called debt.
Larry, wait 1 second. Wait a second. 1 second. It has happened before.
It has happened before. Let me explain. Okay.
And we have still managed to
countries have already defaulted.
You're not listening to
wait. Let me say this. Wait,
I can't hear you because he keeps shouting over you.
Can one of us just speak? I'll just do it in 1 minute.
Okay, can I speak?
Can I just do it in 1 minute? I just want to say, because you are going back and forth and you did not, and I just brought this information to everyone. So now, the African continent is a non-alignment continent. So basically, the African continent has far more friends around this planet than, let's say, the Western Bloc or the Eastern Bloc. So there's always going to be finance involved.
You don't have any friends, and you don't have any leverage.
No.
You have no leverage and no friends.
No. I understand, Dr. Henry Clark. I understand that conversation. I understand that part of the conversation. But this is just economic geopolitics conversation. When I say we have more friends than every other person in the world, I'm not talking based on what we need to do by ourselves. That's a different situation. That's what Dr. John Henry Clark has categorically told us. We have no friends. I understand that conversation, but this one is based on geopolitics and economic access to finances.
That's what I'm talking about. You don't have any leverage. You barely have leverage.
Wait, listen, right? I can't believe like African American.
You barely have leverage.
Are you? Wait. Are you African?
I am.
Does it matter what his ethnicity is?
Where on the African
Just
continent
deal with the point, man.
Wait,
why are you being personal attacking his ethnicity?
Asking if he's African doesn't it proves no point.
Wait. Do you know why I'm asking this? Because there are certain people that haven't been on the continent.
I'm a Nigerian. You barely have any
Wait, listen.
That's the reality of the world.
Certain people that haven't been on the continent for so long and possibly only left from one country.
Just personal
There are many people who have never been on the continent that know about the continent.
We want to hear your reply to it.
Listen.
You know, you are
Can I finish?
by going after him. Okay, please.
Okay, so can I finish now? So
you said 1 minute. Finish, brother. You said 1 minute.
If I don't get interrupted, I would have been done now. If you're able to have natural resources and you're also having the manpower, that is, you have the youngest population, and you're always accessing technologies, and your youth are using these technologies as well. At some point, you're talking about manufacturing your own technologies. You have leverage. If you have leverage, and if eventually you find yourself in some financial duress, with that leverage, you are able to access more finance. Period.
That's potential. That's not leverage. That's potential.
Can I address
it's something that has happened before. It's not something that's new.
All right. Can I address Ellery for a second? Then you can come back. Ellery, I want to tell you that during the structural adjustment program period, right, there are actually many African countries that could not pay back their loans. Okay, so two things happened. One, just like even banks in the US, anywhere in the world, if somebody can't pay back the loan, they talk to them and see if they can have what's called a haircut. In other words, they reduce the original loan value, okay, and see if you can make some payments. That has happened. And the other thing that has happened is actually there were negotiations with the European countries and all that, the major shareholders in the Bretton Woods institutions. This is the World Bank and the IMF, and some countries that they're debt forgiven. So that has actually happened. Now, finally, the last point I want to make. Just think about your household. There are people that make $200,000 a year and they can't balance the books, and they have to go to credit cards and everything like that. There are people who make $30,000 a year and they don't go to look out for loans and all that. What I'm simply saying is, just because somebody goes to get loans doesn't mean the taxes are not enough. It means they're spending more than they're taking in. Okay, so the first thing you need to do in your personal life or whatever you're doing is you don't spend more than you bring in. Simple as that.
So then, in regards to what you've said, we're supposedly the richest continent in the world. We have all the resources, yet I've listened to both of you, and it seems that our countries are incapable of managing the finances, and we are constantly taking out loan after loan after loan. One person gives us the loan, we can't pay back their loan. Another person comes and says, I will take the loan, but now you pay me back. How is that empowering?
Larry, the problem is even
Exactly.
Muchi, let me just say something, okay? Let me just say something. You've been talking.
Let me answer Larry just
Muchi, hold on. Come on, hold on. Let me just say something. I think most of our problem is not necessarily because we don't even need the loans. Our leaders are not getting money from the people. The people don't have any, they don't feel any a kind of nation to contribute to their nation like other people do. Like in the context of Nigeria now, we have 200 million citizens, at least 70 to them cannot the state, because they feel like this, we are rich, we should get everything that we want and everything should be easy. We don't, if you look at the loans we get, it's not a lot of money. If Nigerians just put $5 every month aside for the state, can you do your calculation? 100 million people, $5. You will see what comes out every year, and think about, just look at the loan we borrow. Why are we borrowing that loan? You ask yourself. It tells you that our leaders are standing us down, just like they are standing us down from joining the military, just like they are standing us down from being properly developed. It's deliberately somehow done using all these policies that they subscribe to from the West and from other foreign entities. That is where the core of the problem. Our countries have been stood down.
Exactly, and that's a good point. And you know what? The last I checked, I don't remember ever the World Bank, the African Development Bank, or the IMF knocking on somebody's country's door and saying, "Hey, get this loan." These are guys who are going out there to seek these loans. So don't blame the people giving them the loans. Blame the people that are going to ask for the loans.
We're blaming both of them, Muchi.
No, you see, that's your problem. Why do you have to blame two parties? Even if they are going to blame somebody, has got the principle of blame.
Muchi,
so I'll tell you why you blame them.
One second. Can I add to this conversation before you blame whoever you want to blame? I want to add another aspect to this conversation, which is the consumer, the African consumer themselves. Between 2010 and 2020, that's a decade, approximately 20 million Nigerian diasporas remitted over 230 billion with a big B, billion US dollars into the Nigerian economy. 99%, probably 99.9% of all that money was for consumption. Probably only 1% or 0.01% was investment, right? Now, basically, the diasporans worked their heads off, sent the money to Nigeria, and then the money found its way back to America and Europe and wherever else, the origins was from. Why? Because of the consumption, the appetite for foreign-made goods on the African continent. So people will talk about the leaders and point fingers at the leaders. Acceptable, but also individually, because when I saw that number, when I looked at the World Bank remittance report, 2010 to 2020, over 230 billion US dollars from approximately 20 million Nigerians got into Nigeria. Not one single village, hometown, city has water to their own homes or street lights, solar panel street lights, or nothing. this is another issue. So,
but that's the leaders. That's the leaders to blame
Muti,
for that.
Can I just land in one? I was just about to land, Muti. If you just give me this 1 minute, this is another issue, and then you have to put into context how this whole asking for money started. Colonization did a number on us. So when the colonialists left, what did they do? They shut down all their trading routes. They did what they did to the African continent, what they had already done to the first ever black nation, Haiti. That was what they did. That's why they were already knowing that, hey, at some point, they gave you governance and all of that. And people are like, okay, so how are you paying your civil service? And then they stopped buying whatever they were initially exploiting. So there was no money. How do you run a government with no money? And the business you guys were, these colonizers were doing, all of a sudden has shut down until they started collecting money, and then all of a sudden the businesses started booming again. So this is an issue about the entire value chain.
Okay.
Value chain.
All right, but
wait, I don't understand. So you're basically, what you've just said is basically a long-winded way. It's not really that different from what I have said or OB has said. So I'm still confused. What exactly were you arguing against?
I'm adding to the conversation. You can point at the leaders. You can point at the way the loans are being spent, but also I added to the conversation and said it's also the citizenry with an appetite for foreign-made goods and not made in Africa goods.
You're solving the wrong issue. You're solving the wrong issue.
So that is capital.
You're solving the wrong issue. The citizens don't
wait, Mucho. No. I'll tell you this categorically.
Wait, let me answer before you say that.
You said I'm solving the wrong issue. I'll tell you this categorically.
No, you can wait. Let me tell you why I said that. Then you can respond. Wait, please. Wait. First of all,
you started with
the leaders are the ones that get to spend taxes, not the citizens. Okay, so don't talk about citizens and consumption.
Muti, can you wait?
No, I can't wait. Wait for what?
And then you can speak.
I want to
so that you can address it all together.
All I'm telling you is
address it all together. Is that
you're making the wrong diagnosis. You don't know what you're talking about.
So can you pause? So I'll do this last one, and then you can diagnose it all together, right?
How much time do you need?
Wait. So now, the major problem of the African continent is natural, human, and capital resource flight. That is the major issue of the African continent. So these three things is a major issue. So now address it.
Okay, all right.
Tell me why.
I just wanted to say just one thing. Then the rest other people can come in and comment on that. I want to address everything you said. All I wanted to say, in a nutshell, all you were describing the problem of leadership. Okay, and this is why I say so. The leaders, the government is who takes the taxes. Okay, now I work in government, right? So when you get money, okay, there's a budget process. Okay, the budget process, like here, depending on how many houses you have the house. Okay, the house sets the agenda and the priorities, right, to allocate funds to be spent in whatever areas. Okay, now when they do that, they present that to the Senate. And when it goes to the Senate looks over all the proposed budget, right? And they say, okay, we need to cut here. We think we need to increase here. We think we need to do this, okay? And then they go through a reconciliation process between the budget, between the House and the Senate, okay, to come up with a final budget, which and that budget has to be funded. So you don't get to spend money that you don't have. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. So I cannot blame the citizens who are paying taxes, poor citizens, and say, oh, why the loans? It's the leaders who are deciding to get the loans. They don't ask the common citizens to say, hey, should we get loans from the IMF? They are making decisions, and half the time, they are making decisions that are in their own interest, not even the national interest.
Let me bring this point out real quick. If anybody's been paying attention lately, within the last couple of weeks, they've said that the Chinese population has declined. And then there are people saying that they're experiencing an extreme crisis because of COVID. There's some people saying because of the difficulty of taking over Taiwan, that they won't be able to exercise their military power. I say this all to say that there's a lot of propaganda coming out of the United States, that there are even people saying, will China break up? Will they bifurcate like they did in the early 1900s? I'm saying that's to say China's a successful nation that has economic power and some military power. And still, there are other countries in the world who are talking about breaking it up. So even if you have money, even if you are successful, you need a military, you need a strong military. So we're always focused on cash because we're scavengers and we're hungry, but you need to have a military. You have to have strength. You can't live in a world without strength. So people who are talking about this won't happen, that won't happen, that's because you're thinking like a coward. People will always want to take stuff from you.
We mentioned it earlier. Maybe you heard us, Obi. I think I mentioned it, the military, its importance. To Niger mentioned it as well. The military, its importance. The thing about military, they cost money, you know, and
true.
It's always good when the country has the money to build up its military. But as you can see by what some people have been saying, African countries seem to keep wanting to borrow money, and they don't pay the money off. They get themselves into bigger debt. And then they spend more time trying to pay off the debt than actually improving their public infrastructure, like their military or building roads. It's like this vicious circle. I'm against the whole loan thing, because before I was born, Nigeria was taking loans. When I was a kid, Nigeria was taking loans. Now I'm an old man. Nigeria is still borrowing loans. It doesn't seem to ever end.
Yeah,
and
you're right. And the loan amounts are mad small, man, in Africa. They're like a 1 billion here, a couple $100 million there. These people are not paying them back. It's crazy.
And well, you know what, Ellery and Niger, I hear you about the military. You know, I know you guys try to, especially Niger, emphasize on the military. Okay, here's what I say to you. If you want the militaries in Africa to be strong, the economies have to be strong. Just like Ellery said, it takes money to build the military. Do you know how much is the spend for the U.S. government military spending a year? $778 billion US a year. Think about that. 778 billion. It's probably, I don't know what's the GDP of Nigeria, but it's probably close to that, if not more. So if you want the military, to be strong, grow the economy. Look at China. What has happened with China? As the economy has grown, their military has grown, because guess what? If you have $1,000 and if you allocate 10% to your military, that's $100. But if your economy is worth 10,000 and you still allocate 10%, you don't move the percentage. You're allocating $1,000, right? So that's tenfold, just because your economy has grown. So all these issues, so money is at the center of everything. So don't say, oh, money, this money, that. Everything that you talk about, everything that we want Africa to be about, it will be brought about by a stronger economy in Africa, in African countries, and better management of what we have. Okay, fiscal management, fiscal discipline. All right. The problem is this.
That's true.
A lot of us can't balance our checkbooks, and then we get into government. You want to try and balance billions of dollars. Make that make sense?
All right, let's pass it to where's Philip? I thought Philip was on here. Where'd Philip go? All right, gas him up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the real crux of the matter is that, you know, particularly, like I said, I can't talk about any other country for the most part other than Nigeria. But, you know, Nigeria, if you start asking yourself, when did the debt burden for Nigeria start? It starts, so Nigeria, hold on. It started in the Obasanjo government. During Obasanjo's government, I believe Nigeria had a public foreign debt of $3.74 billion. That's in 1979. And by 1983, that debt under Shehu Shagari, which was not a military government, was at 20-something billion US dollars. And it's always fluctuated from Shagari's time, from that 20-something billion up until it goes from 20 to 50. You know, the Paris Club forgave it in 99. Obasanjo and a lot of people lobbied, and they allegedly forgave it. Now Nigeria, the debt is still in the upwards of billions. So the issue has always been mismanagement. But I think we don't tell the whole story. I always come on here and say this. Who are these leaders? Well, when you start researching these leaders, you start finding out that these leaders are often compromised individuals whose allegiance is not to the local countries that they're supposed to be governing. And until we can get to a situation where the leaders on the ground are prepared to no longer take resources from that country and take them abroad, not just the actual capital resources, but sending their children abroad and all these other things, we can talk to it blue in the face about an economy and the military. If we don't have people that have an allegiance to us, we are wasting our time. And that's just what to me, the real crux of the matter is. And that's the real fight. If you look at the people who are at the top, you go check your Senate list. I don't want to say any names, right? These are gangsters. Nigeria. See, oh, this guy is in a position of power. He used to be an attorney in Atlanta. Stole his client's money and ended up in a position of power in Nigeria. This other guy running politics was a governor of a powerful state in Nigeria, was accused of being in charge of a heroin ring. So this is what I'm saying. It's like when we have these so-called people in positions of power, they're already compromised by the West. Atiku, who was running, when he ran against Buhari the last time, Atiku, if I'm not mistaken, as at that time, he might still have it, has an arrest warrant out for his arrest in the United States. Somebody made a phone call. He was able to get to the United States to have a conversation politically, and that arrest warrant was ignored. It was stayed. No one paid attention to it for, I think he had 4 hours. Hold on. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Diplomatic immunity?
No, brother. I know diplomatic. Wait, hold on, brother. Brother. No. Listen, brother. Listen. I have researched it. If you think I'm lying, you can check your phone on Google right now. Atiku, listen, brother. No. Again, Atiku Abubakar.
In America, it was under diplomatic immunity from reliable.
No. Listen, I'm not worried about anyone. Listen, I'm not. Listen. I'm not in those clubs. I don't go to those lodges and do handshakes and funny winks. So if you in there, that's cool. Maybe you know. But what I'm saying is that these are the kind of people. Okay, cool. So then let's not talk about them. When I'm airing them out, let me air them out. When I air them out, let me air them out. I'm gonna swing my balls on that because I can get killed when I step back into Nigeria. So that's just real talk. When I step back home, they can come for me. So if I'm airing them out, let me air them out. But the point is, you don't have to know when last when I was in Nigeria. I'm on these platforms all the time. But the point is to forget about me. Again, forget about me. Don't worry about me. You see, this is what I'm trying to say. When we are talking about these leaders, somehow, somewhere, it's like it pinches these people in the body. Everybody's like, oh no.
Pinching me, I was just
okay, so then let me finish talking about the leaders, please, and don't interrupt me. No one interrupted you when you said your wisdom.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So calm down and let me listen, brother. Okay, if it's incorrect, let me talk about the leaders. I'm on these platforms more than you. Trust me, they know me. Dynast 2 Niger Larry, they've seen me. Moochie too. Me and Moochie don't always agree, but they see me, and I don't come in here and say things that I can't provide a source for. So you don't know me, I don't know you, and let's just keep it that way. But again, for those who are listening, we have leaders in Nigeria who are compromised. When I started researching the ports and why many of those ports are not open, some of the people in positions of power in Nigeria in charge of those ports, they have ties to Israel. They have ties to other foreign countries. That's where they go on vacation. You think that guy gives a damn to Niger about building a military when his favorite place to travel is Israel and Zurich? He doesn't give a damn. So how do you and how do we to Niger and these people, how do we get these leaders? How do we fight them? And that's the real fight. It's going to take blood. It's going to take boldness. That's what the real fight is.
So then, Gaston, just to confirm from what you've told us, with all these people who either were strategically placed in these African countries to basically facilitate what their colonial masters want, in your opinion, do you think then colonization never really ended? It just changed?
Of course not. Look at if we read what Kwame Nkrumah said, He said in his book about neocolonialism. He's the one who came up with the term. Now, he talked about the hidden government in his book. Why don't we read what happened to Kwame Nkrumah? Why don't we read what happened to Patrice Lumumba? These things are there. And unfortunately, we have a group of leaders, we have a group of Africans who are so short-sighted. They've been short-sighted since the 1400s with the Portuguese. When they came there and said, hey, listen, give me your enemies for mirrors, trinkets, and top hats, and some of these goddamn cowries, then this Dutch wax print garbage that the Indians didn't even want. And we've been short-sighted since then, since the 1400s. And now, and then when they brought in their force, the West African frontier force, because they didn't bring in large amounts of soldiers to colonize African administrations, to create administrations in Africa. They used other Africans. So by the time they brought them in, the African leaders were like, oh, wait, what? It's too late. You caught with your thumb in your mouth. Yeah. While the other nations were building militaries and trying to protect themselves, we were sitting down there arguing over manillas and cowrie shells, which are not even indigenous to that land. There's only one species of cowrie shell in West Africa. The rest was imported, just like the so-called African clothes. This Dutch wax print comes from Holland. They tried to make it and give it to the Indians, copying the Indian Madras clothes. The Indians didn't want it. So we've been short-sighted since. And when I come on these platforms, please, I don't like it when, and I'm not dissing you, brother, but please, brother, when we call out these leaders, you don't have to, it's not mean, it's not misinformation, but these people, their children are in Oxford, their children are in Cambridge, their children are at the UN meeting pretending to be Africans when they grew up with house helps and all this other nonsense, and they're sucking the lifeblood on us. So we got to stop.
I agree with you, Gassimap. I agree with you, Gassimap. That's what I actually talked the same brother that when he was making his argument that most of the blame has to be put on the leaders. Now, let me be on the bright side. Okay?
Wait, Muchi, did you listen to the rest of what Gastimap said, Muchi?
Just one thing, just quick, and you can go. I want to say something on the positive side. I've met guys and ladies, the folks that are working in the African Union, guys working at the Africa Free Continental Trade Area in Ghana. I've met Africans who are working in this stuff. Okay, in our lifetime, as we live, we would most likely see an African passport, one single passport for all the countries. They are working on this, okay? The Africa Free Continental Trade Area is in place. It's just because of COVID and all that, some of the mechanisms did not start as it was supposed to, okay? I've met with some of these people. So in our lifetime, things will get better. I believe it will get better. We have all these old dinosaurs that Gastimap is talking about. But I do feel the people, the new leadership that will come along, it will be better. And let's not forget, our countries are not 100 years old in terms of when the colonialists left, okay? That's a fact, okay? The first countries, I think, is Ghana, 1960-something. So that's just over 60-something years. So it will get better. Yes, we have to criticize, but I have faith that we are moving in the right direction.
I remember when I was a kid and I couldn't go to school because there was a military coup. Alhaji Shehu Shagari was the president, and there was a coup, and then Buhari took over. And this was in 83, 84. Fast forward to 2023. Who's the president of Nigeria? Buhari.
You get what I'm saying? And Buhari and these guys oversaw from $3.7 billion, Larry, under Obasanjo's government to $23 billion under Shagari. Now, Shagari was elected, even though some argue he was just put in there as a puppet. But $23 billion. This was the beginning of massive, just massive looting. And where are they taking this money to? They were taking it abroad. The flooding that's happened in southern Nigeria, where places like my village, Two Nigers area, are flooded. They were supposed to build a dam. Cameroon built a dam. Nigeria was supposed to build a bigger dam, which would have provided us electricity. This was during Shagari's time. They didn't build it.
Yeah, the Dassin Hausa Dam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why didn't they build it? Now, the guys who got the contracts, if we start doing forensic accounting, start looking, well, who got the contracts? It goes to the top. And then, and here's the thing that hurts me. When you go to Abuja and you meet these so-called big boys, I'm big men. Yeah, I get money. Yes, me. Who are you? Who's your father? When you talk and say, okay, Ogasi, you're doing all these things, you're taking this money. At least, okay, do something a little bit. Why? For what? That's the mentality of the people you're dealing with. They don't give a damn. So it's hard. It's almost impossible unless you got unless we can politically make life hell on earth. And I'm glad that at least Mutri said this. I agree with him on this. I saw a video. Some politicians were trying to go through. I think it was on Ondo State or Ogun State. The people were stoning their cars and their motor cars and their police escorts. They were throwing rocks at them. To hell with you people. That's what we got to make it. Life must be hell on earth for you in that country if you ain't doing the right thing for us.
And gas them up. I want to say something. You know, a few weeks ago, I don't know if you're on the panel, there was a brother from Nigeria, right? And I was talking about not all money is good money. And he tried to insist on, as long as I'm making money in Nigeria, they don't care it or something like that. And you see, that the kind of attitude, if you...
you mean Kidola? Kidola said, yeah, we can have prostitutes and shake ass.
Exactly, and I was trying to say, we have to have morals and ethics, okay? Because imagine that kind of person going into government, what he's going to do with people's funds. You see what I'm saying? Because
there's no fiduciary capacity.
Money, then it's good. No, we can't do that. That's the selfishness that you're talking about.
I wanted to ask, because everybody here has given their opinions, which have been very interesting. Dynast, I'm curious about you. Can Africa actually avoid the scramble in Scramble 2.0? I'm curious. Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I mean, when you say scramble, like we got to define like the scramble.
It's changed. It's not the traditional scramble of the Berlin Conference.
Yes, they're gonna.
Dynast, Royal Image wants to get back on stage.
Africa would not be scrambled again.
Nice. I think Phil is in the background too.
Did you? Wow, I can't believe that. That's
not here. Philip's not on here.
That's good.
No,
to hear you
Royal
saying
Image
that.
is in the backstage, or he wants to get back on.
Go, Royal Image, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, most of the time we talk, but we need to understand how we think is not how an African is supposed to think. Who we are is not who we are. We talk about all these things. We never look at how our minds have been conditioned to see this world and to look at everything that we are dealing with, right? Like, sorry, I haven't been on too long, so maybe you guys already covered this. But somebody just mentioned that the countries are young, and these are excuses. We've been on this planet millions of years. We know how to govern ourselves and deal with our issues. But we say, Ghana is this 50 years old, Nigeria is 50 years old, we're young. These are all excuses. And the reason why we have all these issues, we use a system that was imposed on us to govern us, to take from us, to steal from us. So what happens is these systems that are in place are not our systems. You understand? These are foreign systems we're trying to make work. And the system was put in place to take, rob, steal, rape, pillage, and all these things. That's why all these minerals are going to the same places as when the European was in power. Nothing is going to change if we don't change the system. Nothing is going to change if we don't change our mind. Nothing is going to change if we don't deal with how we have been conditioned to be. Our ancestors, if we wake them up and they come, they will be disgusted how we are. We don't want to deal with that. We just want to fast forward everything. We need to check the mind and deal with the mind. This is not who we are, but we're trying to make everything work. The Chinese is Chinese. The Chinese, they think Chinese. The Indian is Indian. Doesn't matter where you find them. They will speak English, Hindi, or whatever, but they are Indian. They understand themselves very well. We haven't defined anything for ourselves. All we do is we talk, and we just want this, we want that. There is nothing in Africa that the African wants. Africans, we talk shit. Everybody talks shit. There is nothing that we are proud of that we can say, this is ours, and we're going to promote it to the whole world. In Ghana, in Nigeria, there's one group of tribe that's dominant, and the rest of them will not help push that tribe up because that's just, nobody's with it. We haven't defined nothing for ourselves. Our minds have been fucked from a long time. The Arabs came in 1,200 years. They took us to slavery. They beat us. And then the European came another 400-500 years on top of that. And they said, you guys are free. But the system we're using to govern ourselves, we never talk about that.
What's your solution? What do you propose? What's your solution?
Hold on. Again, the solution is learning, understanding that we have a problem that we need to deal with, a psychological problem that we need to deal with. Don't just say
we're talking about something concrete, not platitudes right now. You know, we can't always have these platitude conversations.
But brother, don't cut his wisdom. But brother, please don't cut the man's wisdom, brother, please.
You guys need to we need to learn to listen to each other too. when you have a thought, write it down, put it on paper. Don't just say, okay, this came on, I have to say it. That's not how we exchange thoughts. We're never gonna learn that way. Just because you disagree doesn't mean you have to voice your voice right away. Write it down so we can have a proper conversation. Everybody has something to say. I'm just saying what I think based on what I've read, what I've gathered. We have a problem. We need to understand that the Chinese went through their bullshit with the European, but they still maintain the Chineseness. They come to Ghana, Nigeria. It doesn't matter where they go. You know they're Chinese. Everybody is who they are. We are not who we are. So again, the solution is first we gotta fix ourselves. Now you're gonna ask me, well, how do we do that? You gotta look in the mirror, know and figure out what's wrong with it. It's a self thing. And when you figure it out, you say help your brother and your sister. If not, then your children is the key. We're always trying to look at things. Oh, I could do this. No, fix the children. Let's deal with the children. An example: all these Americans going to Africa and all this stuff. If they have all these bright ideas, they should have children on the continent. You're not gonna do it yourself. That knowledge that you acquired, the wisdom and all of that you have acquired, you gotta feed it to the children and give it to those children so they can make it or build the.
You're derailing the conversation.
What do you mean?
You're derailing. We're talking about.
No, he's not derailing the conversation, brother.
Yes,
he's not.
Yes,
No, he's not, brother. You see, I think what you're doing is you're trying to force him to be a materialist. He's talking about the psychological impact.
Every platitude that we talk about all the time. And I also reject that notion. If you've been acting the same way for 600 years, is that not who you are?
No, not at all. Because it's all about programming. The brother's talking about psychological. See, brother, he's describing the psychological impact that Africans have been faced with, and that he just said accurately. He said,
if you've been acting the same way for 600 years, is that not who you are?
No, that doesn't make sense. Like again, you sound like all these materialists. That doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense.
Gassed him up. From what you've been telling us what we know a lot about the elites and how the elites have been forging a legacy where they keeping their own people in power to pollute our nations and prevent them from excelling. So if they are still in power, how is what Royal Image is saying going to come to fruition? Because those people will stop at nothing to hold on to power.
Well, it has always been.
You guys always been a fight. Hold on. See, you asked for solution, right? And I'm saying, let's educate the children. You're saying, well, these people are still there, so it doesn't matter what we do, we can't do anything. Then why even have this conversation to begin with?
So I'll tell you why. Before I was born, those people were in power. Whilst I was a kid in Nigeria, those people were in power. Now I'm an old man, those people are still in power. So when I'm pressing you for something tangible, it's not because I'm being facetious or being rude.
I said the children. Let's focus on children. They are the future. The future is the children. So
that's fine.
The knowledge that we have acquired and possess.
Children existed in the 60s. Children existed in the 70s and 80s. Generation after generation.
Your father, your grandparents don't know what you know. You know what you know, right? Your children gotta know what you know at an early age so they can build on the knowledge that you have acquired that your parents, your grandparents, the ancestors don't have.
Nigel says it all the time. You don't have the chance to wait for your kids to do it right. You have to do it right now.
Well, here's the thing. Listen, I think there's a middle ground. I think there's a middle ground because one, the children, as I say, if you go to Nigeria now, you talk to children, what do they say? They say to serve Nigeria is not by force. So the children are going along. You know, Larry's laughing because he heard it too, right? I'm sure Nigeria heard it at the same time. But the for me, again, just look. And I talk about the elites, right? People, this is why I say we got to do the historical research. Nigeria's first foreign finance, the first example of foreign finance was in 1978. There was a $28 million contract for the first rail line project in the country. Where's that rail line project today? Right now, as of as I said, it jumped from about 3 billion in 79 under Obasanjo to 28 billion under Shagari, right? Now, just looking at these numbers here, the Nigerian with the Paris Club in 2006, they forgave the debt, right? And it got down to about 3.5 billion and 3.4 billion in 2007. As of today, just looking at it right here, and that's on tradingeconomics.com and the World Bank, Nigeria's debt 2022 is at 39 billion. About 40 billion. So how did we go in 2006, $3 billion to now we're at $40 billion? And again, it doesn't seem like anything is improving in the country. And this is why I said it's a fight. Yes, we have to educate our children so they don't make the same mistakes that our parents made. But at the same time, we have to be prepared to fight. I agree with you, Niger. I think shout out to Philip. He gave me this idea. I got it from him. Mandatory military service for all Nigerians and probably all Africans, just like they do in Israel. Everybody has to be a member of the military. If you're a citizen and you're able-bodied up to age 45, you are serving in that military. So that way, it's no longer to serve Nigeria is not by force. To serve Nigeria is a duty and an honor. Because we are not patriotic. You know, we treat our police officers like crap, and then we wonder why they're not giving us the type of service they need. So we as Nigerians got to start fighting tooth and nail and fighting with blood. And some of us will die. And I'm not saying I'm going to jump and say, hey, kill me first. But if it's so be it, so be it. We got to be prepared to fight, because these people in the West, as they say, it's just business. It's just business. They want to take advantage of us.
Okay,
and they're winning that game.
Let's pass it to Philip. Go ahead, Philip.
Greetings, panel. I felt like I was locked out of my house. Thank you guys for letting me come back on and share some wisdom.
Why were you locked out? Was the gatekeeper eating some egusi and fufu? What was the gatekeeper doing?
Oh, I'm not accusing anybody. I lost the key, but it's all good, man. I just had a couple of things that I wanted to drop. I didn't plan to come on today, but you're on my stuff, so I really wanted to try to drop a few things with it. And right off the top, and where Gas was talking, we got to talk about something, because this is true in the diaspora as well. And I'm just going to use it from a Chicago example, because that's where I'm from. And that is, we see things in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and we're like, why does that exist? For example, in Chicago, you can find plenty of vacant lots where there was a house or there was a structure there, and now it's just broken cement, and it's just sitting there and it never gets developed. And you know, you walk past these things or drive past them and you're like, why they, at least as a kid, I was like, why the hell, it's in a great location, why isn't it being developed? And the answer is because there's somebody that owns that lot, and that it's more valuable to them undeveloped than it is to be developed. And they're waiting for whatever moment it is to then sell that piece to whoever they're trying to line up to make that money. And I'm using that as an analogy to what Gas was saying, which is a lot of the structure at the top is put in a way that's containment, and that there is more money being made in not doing it than doing it. So then the question then becomes, well, when you have this kind of corruption, how do you stop it? And the answer is you have to build an identity within the community, whether it be local or national, where there's an expectation of transparency and justice. And the biggest problem that we have, I'm arguably from one of the most notorious, if not known to be corrupt cities in the country. And so changing that kind of environment to expect transparency and justice to be served is what's, it has to be kind of ingrained. Like, I guess, you know, Wisdom Never Speaks was kind of going at this a different way of trusting one another. But I'm saying to trust the idea that, hey, we can't do things unless they're transparent. So with that in mind, some of the stuff that Mucci was talking about and some of the stuff that I don't know if it's pronounced Yade was talking about, I just wanted to kind of drop my 2 cents on it from what little experience I have. And that is, one of the first things that we need to address is actually something very small, which is this. In many of these countries, and I've heard this from many of my African friends, we've got an issue with clean title and getting title in a place where when we do transactions to commoditize land and to commoditize resources, that the title exchange is clean. We don't have that, as I understand it, yet. And I just saw, I'm sure many of you have seen it, this TikTok of this Mzungu guy who's talking about all the great investment and opportunity that's available in West Africa. And one of the first things that he talks about is we've got to get into these countries and start cleaning up the process of title. Now, I would prefer it if Black Africans, diaspora, and continental work together to do it themselves rather than to have some multinational bank combined with Mzungus to do it. But this is a big point. Title, and the other part about it is zoning. And these are very boring topics, but they're absolutely necessary to do the next thing that I'm going to talk about, which is you have to have a tax basis. But you can't have a tax basis, particularly about property or resources, if you don't have clean title and you don't have clean zoning. You see this? So, and one of the specific issues that we have in many of the African countries is title by various ethnic groups and where they indigenously exist. So that nuance has to be addressed. In the United States, they brush these people aside, put them on reservations, and genocided them. This is not something that we want nor will do in Africa. So some sort of process by which we have a concept of what's called the public commons, of which these tribal areas would need to fall into that, to say this is a public commons area that is ran by this particular ethnic group, but is not for sale. And in exchange for that, these areas will be. So you need to have that, right? And this is all quote unquote assuming that we can get some movement at the top to actually get this right. And Gas aired it out of the problems we have there. But assuming we can do that, then once you get a tax basis, then you can build this next thing that we really need, which is what I wanted to deal with what Muchi was saying. What Muchi is saying is not wrong. It's just that, Muchi, the resources and land is valuable. And the way that the Mzungus are extracting it is in a way that is cheap for them. If we change these things, it makes it more expensive. So they have an incentive not to do it the right way, right? They have an incentive to make sure that the government is not quite able to do it and that there's civil strife between the ethnic groups, right? So I'm not saying you're wrong. You're actually correct. But there's a bigger problem, which is where we sit within their system, which is at the bottom, both in the diaspora and on the continent. So to reverse it, then you're going to step on these people's toes and they're not going to like it. And usually the way that they go at us is by some sort of end-to-end military cooperation, just like we had with, oh my gosh, my guy in Congo. We were just talking about him. But Mobutu came from out of his military. And this is how they tend to do it. So what I was proposing is if you make national service and military service in most of these countries, then maybe you can create a culture of national identity and loyalty to country over loyalty to money and outside influence. But that's a big lift. One of the books, I forget what it was called, where they tried this in Ethiopia to mix results. But you could argue where they are now that it actually worked, but it took a long time. It took decades. Anyway, so where I was going was with bond markets. In building an internal intra-African and diaspora bond market, that then the diaspora and Africans within the continent can invest in each other's countries. Because you can say, I want to build this bridge, or I want to build this highway, or I want to build this tollway, and we're going to take money from a public offering of that bond to build specifically this. And so therefore, you don't need to go to the IMF and the World Bank, which in my view are extraction devices for Western countries. And if you look at, oh my gosh, I can't remember what the professor's name is at the University of Missouri at Kansas City. He says that he worked for Citibank for years. But the bottom line is to self-fund instead of looking to external investment. So we would be looking within Africa and the diaspora to do that. And then if you want to add the ability for limited external investment, you can do that. But the bottom line is you got to build a bond market, but you can't build it unless you have the other stuff that I started with, which was title and zoning and public commons for the various ethnic tribal groups. Okay, so at the end of this, what your goal is to have regional economies that have hard currencies in the various regions. I think Ibube had enumerated 5 and the diaspora would be 6, but they would be backed by minerals and gold and whatever other resources you would want, oil, that it would be from a pool of resources that have a value. And that value has to be determined from buying from within the continent and the diaspora, not the Mzungu market, because that's another thing. I would point to Kanye West in that his billions were only billions if Mzungus want to buy his things. They basically kneecap that guy within a weekend, because without the demand from the larger community, then it's not a billion anymore. I believe he's somewhere around 400 or 200 million now. So I'm just going to throw that out. I had a lot there, and I'm sure the panel, listen, O'Leary, I'm on your thing, man. This is, you always talk about the IMF and the World Bank. So I particularly wanted to hop on that topic.
I always get a lot of pushback when I mention it.
Philip,
not really like.
Philip, let me address a few things that you talked about, okay? So first off, let me say that in actual fact, in a number of African countries, this thing you're talking about title and all that, it's there, okay? Now, the only issue that sometimes exists, all right, is that because of corruption, and we haven't started utilizing big data, right, and making the process of authenticating documents to make sure that they're legit, we have to get to that point. So you find that sometimes people working in these government offices, they will issue a document giving title to somebody that doesn't even own something, right? So now you're going to faith. Now you talk about bonds, right? Again, if the citizens don't have faith in the government, they are not going to buy the bonds of the government if they are not, because what is a bond? A bond is just you're lending money to the government, right? And they're saying in good faith, we are going to pay you in 5 years or in 10 years, and you gave us 100, we're going to give you $120, $105 at the end of this period of time. Now, if the citizens do not have faith that the government will honor that debt obligation, they will not buy those bonds. I'll give you a specific example that happened in my country, right? There's a time when people were told, oh, you can open US dollar denominated accounts, okay? But one day things turned around. People were told, oh, all your money has been converted to the local currency. But guess what? The local currency was so depreciated that when you wanted to turn it back into US dollars, you were getting maybe 20% of the original money that you put in a bank. So now, can you imagine in such an instance going back to people and say, hey, we want to issue these domestic bonds, give us your hard currency and things like that. So again, I always say leadership. If the leadership is good and faithful to the people, and they practice fiscal discipline, right? A lot of things can happen. But just like you, if you don't trust a bank, you're not going to take your money to a bank that you know may not get your money back.
Can I say something about the leadership? See, every African leader goes to school outside. By the time they finish, their mindset is like the European. So when they come back to govern the African, he governs like an European. That's why I keep saying our mindset. I don't think you guys understand. The African mind is
derailing
like
again. Derailing.
Are you suggesting European leaders steal money to the extent that African leaders do?
No. Listen. You guys calm down, okay?
They were just talking about taxes, about titles.
Yeah, but he mentioned the leadership.
And then now you're talking about mindset again. You're delirium.
He got a point. I connect the phone when he finished, but I'll just go after him.
I'm talking about the leadership. He did mention leadership, and I'm just adding to the leadership that we should look at the leadership. I think you guys feel like I'm attacking. I'm African. I'm hardcore.
I'm not saying you're
African.
attacking, but we say this all the time. Let's just deal with one issue at a time. We're talking about
He did
actual
mention
stuff,
leadership.
and
Did
you're
he not
talking
mention
about
leadership?
mindset, but we talk about mindset 24/7 on YouTube. Let's just talk about
No,
the
I don't hear
actual
nobody
issue.
talk about mindset when I come in and
People,
listen
that's
to you
what
guys talk.
everybody says. We say we got a problem with doing business in
Listen, let me
Africa.
say what I
Oh, it's
gotta
our
say
mindset.
anyways.
We have a
Let me say
problem with
what I gotta say.
relationships.
You
It's
just
our
listen.
mindset. We have a problem with
Listen.
title. It's our mindset.
Don't tell
We
me what
always
I
say
can say
that.
what I can't say. Okay, relax. I'm not here
Listen,
to
I just
argue with
told you what
nobody.
it is. You just
He
derailing the
said he
conversation,
did
bro.
mention leadership. Okay, if the leadership is right, they can lead properly. I'm saying the leadership has an issue because they go to Europe, they get these education from the European.
You're
Why
like
is it
the
so hard to
millionth
understand?
person who said that. You're like the 1 millionth person who said that. 1 million people have said that same thing. I'm just letting you know. You're not saying anything new. I'm sorry. No disrespect. People say that all the time.
And
Let's talk
okay,
about
so
what
when you hear
Philip
people,
and
okay,
Illyria are
cool, no
talking
problem,
about.
no problem. All right. So when you hear people saying that, what do you say to that?
Dude, we always say the same
I know. What do you say when
prescription we're going to say.
you said people say it, so I'm asking you when people say it,
People say
what do
that
you say
over and
to it?
over again. Listen,
And
we're
what do
talking
you
about
say?
the
What do you
conversation
say
with
to it?
Larry.
I mean,
Listen, bro.
it's
Just
kind of going to a back and forth, man. Can
So
one
why
guy
don't
let
you guys
the
don't
other
let
guy
me say
speak
what I gotta
first?
say? You see,
Yeah, FBA, why
Africans
don't you
have
go,
an issue
FBA?
with
Why don't you
dealing
go,
with
FBA?
understand. See, they
Yeah,
understand they have
let's
the
pass the
European
mic
mindset.
to Zulu FBA. Go ahead, bro. You've been waiting. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of just go back into the conversation and come back forward real quick. I think we went. I think it's F. I cannot tell the dude name starts with an E. I think with him and the other guy were having a conversation about was about schooling necessarily and power and all this other stuff. That was basically an example of how do you say this? Institutional power and regular power, right? Or just necessary strength. Let's go with that, right? If you have institutional power, you can make sure that all your kids get the same education. They get all the information they need to be in a global society. That's what you're in right now currently. Currently in a global society. And Africans have no training or the thought process of a global society. They only know their village. They only know Nigeria. They don't necessarily have the mindset at the current level for as a group. And I'm not saying your personal self or whatever, but I'm saying as a group, they don't have that global mindset. So when you actually own this chessboard of life, and you only thinking as big as your town, big as your country, you're going to get outplaced by different groups of people, and they are working together. You need to understand that, right? And so it's understanding these different things help you have a better outlook and how you need to move in this world. That's why I thought the other guy was talking about outlook, because depending on how your outlook is, depending on how you're actually going to move in this world. Like when Europeans went to China, their outlook was, what would I need to do to rob these people, steal from these people? The gunpowder was already there in China. The cannon was already there in China. But the outlook wasn't, we need to use this as a weapon to kill people. The European mindset was, I need to see what I can use to make this weapon into the best weapon I can to kill people. It's the outlook and how you interact with the very thing that you have. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
All right. So I've been listening to everybody. To Niger, we've had this conversation about military. I think a couple of years ago. The mandatory service for Nigerians in the Nigerian Armed Forces a couple of years ago. Now, what is happening? I'm always coming back to what the leaders are doing today, because you can stay in the 28th century and you can make those conversations about mistakes that were made at the time. There wasn't access to information as we do have today. A lot of the things the World Bank and IMF was doing at that time was brand new to African leaders at the time. And obviously, with the breaking of that monopoly by China, a new different concept has emerged. So African leaders are not as naive as you all may think. They're not the know all and be all type of people, but at least to a large extent they're not where they were in the 20th century. classic example. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement area. It went over a whole lot of people's heads. The fact that after it was launched on the 1st of January 2021, by the 7th of September, basically 7 months later, the first ever African Union and CARICOM virtual summit happened. If that's not Pan-Africanism, I don't know what is. Eventually, last year, 1st of September, somebody is on a hot mic. I don't know who it is. Can you mute, please? By the 1st of September to the 3rd of September, in Barbados, the African Import-Export Bank, which is obviously like a bank of the African Union, just like the African Development, was with Cari Bank and Caribbean countries, and with prime ministers and representatives signing agreements for Caribbean countries to join the African Continental Free Trade Agreement area. They're talking about, hey, we need to like remove a lot of tariffs. We want it to be direct flights from Caribbean countries to the African continent and things of that nature. You now have regional currencies that will be coming up. West Africa has its setbacks, but now they have said till 2027. East Africa is talking about its own regional currency. Latin American, Caribbean countries are now talking about their own regional currency based on what Brazil said with Argentina. And I heard Venezuela also wants to join that regional currency. The world, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the whole de-dollarization of the world is happening in real time. The world, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be far different from 2030 than what it is today. A lot of the financial monopoly that has happened in the 20th century will not replay itself in the 21st century. Now, when it comes to the military, I don't want to use Nigeria because, we're talking about the African people in around the world in general. Currently, right now, the African continent has had the African standby forces. It's not integrated properly. Could you please mute your mic? Somebody's mic is hot, so I keep getting feedback. So once that forces are integrated and it becomes more efficient, it starts foiling itself and things like that. It will be simultaneously with the integration of the African economies. We will be doing more trade together. Already, Zambia has led the way to invest in a refinery in Angola so that it doesn't import its own, energy from outside the continent when Angola is just across the border. Now it's said as a country, it's not going to be doing that. It's going to be getting its energy from outside of the continent. It's going to go directly, and it is invested in an Angolan refinery, and it will be getting it directly from Angola. So these are the type of balance perspective of what's going on the continent. Are there other things that could be done better? Certainly. Are there other things bureaucratic?
Can we try to keep it brief, Mister?
Pardon?
No, I'm asking you to keep it brief. Other people need to talk.
I was listening.
You have
make a good African politician.
No, I know
He
he's
would make
making a
good
lot of
African
points, but he needs to
politician.
allow other people to chime
you
in.
guys forever. Tonight, I'm making my statement. I was listening to you guys.
I think you should run for office.
Can I
you should run for office. Yeah.
Of course, I can do that as well.
Because you sound like a politician right now, bro.
I'm not a politician.
Try to keep it brief, man.
I'm not
We
a
are having a
politician,
discussion.
but I'm telling you the facts, things that I have not heard you guys speak about in this
No, we
room.
are listening, but you don't.
Do you
want to keep it
understand?
brief so people can be able to have
Can
fun
you
through.
mute? Can I finish? if that's
No,
okay.
why should I mute? I've been listening to you for about 30 minutes. I've not said one word, and you're here going on for 10
But you
minutes.
have not added any value to this conversation.
All right,
Because
And
I'm
I'm
quiet.
adding value that you have not stated
No,
in
Edward, you
full.
can't just keep going on
Do you
non-stop.
understand that I
Oh,
do?
man, y'all too
Tonight,
You
I
always have
do
this
not
problem. You know you always have this problem, and you don't
So
even
can
want to
I?
recognize it.
I gotta move both of you guys. African Devil, go ahead, African Devil. Go ahead, African Devil.
Hey, appreciate you. Yeah, I'm glad actually. I always wanted to say I only have a short amount of time, got like minutes. But yeah, to Nigel was correct though. I think that we should just regulate our panels a little bit more and just have it maintain the timed nature of questions and answers. And people who interrupt others should only get one chance, like that one warning. And if they do it again, then they get ejected from the discussion. But after that, the only thing I wanted to say is that we're not in a lack of solutions. Okay. What I heard everybody talking about so far, I think we just need to remember Sankara's revolution, and take that model, if we would be well versed in it, take the model how everybody from the top down was held accountable, from the children in the bush to the engineers to the military personnel to the government officers. Everybody has to be held accountable. Everybody has to put in their work and learn from each other. And if we could take that model of that revolution in Burkina Faso in 1983 and incorporate it into all of our organizational activities, whether you have a business or you have a nonprofit or even like Donfo, whatever, as long as we have a reference point for what already we know to work. When we're talking about loans, we're talking about all of these things are related. Even what Gas Them Up was talking about earlier is related. He was talking, and the brother who was being misunderstood not too long ago about the mindset, the spirit inside of the people, the political education of the people has to be adjusted. And so these, like, we don't need any like tangible solutions because they've all been laid out. Even with Blacks in America, we had those solutions laid out in an organized fashion by organizations like the Panthers, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on. We just have to not reinvent the wheel, but take all of those solutions, organize them together, synthesize them, and then we have to really educate ourselves politically. Nobody that's talking about these issues seriously should not be well versed in the revolutions of the past and the organizations of the past that were powerful enough, efficient, effective enough to gain the attention of the global governments. We should know these things like the back of our hands, because if they're that powerful to get the attention of the dominant, the powers that be at the time, then you know that they have significant potential to be powerful in and of themselves. So we need to just move from that. And maybe sometimes we need to, have more study sessions, and training sessions where we get to how are we going to repoliticize ourselves or politicize ourselves if we're not, so that we don't have so many people not understanding that the RBG, the Garveyism it's like a science. It's just what works. It's literally the most logical option for us to take. We should be beyond all of those things. We should be beyond having a misunderstanding about how the economics of the planet works. Economics is fairly simple when we know management of time, resources, et cetera, et cetera. We know it's just, you got to produce more than you consume. And we know that the people who don't want to see us thrive, they have figured out how to extract resources in every way from us, including our time, like the time we spend going over the same issues over and over and over. That is key for us to fix our political education. So I'm just saying that we need to look back at the things that have worked. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And like I said, the main thing, if we look at Sankara's revolution in Burkina Faso, you can pretty much see an example of everything you need to do to turn an organization or a nation, a group of people, into a self-sufficient entity. But he warned us, he warned the leaders of the time, and he warned us that if we start parading around, false idols and putting up people as being demigods and all these different, and then we didn't work together and do this and take stands, be incorruptible, like the name Burkinabe suggests, that we would have these same problems. So I just wanted to insert that into the atmosphere, into the discussion, and just hopefully is well received, or hopefully it makes a little bit of sense.
I wanted to ask you, thanks for that. You gave us the Burkina Faso model. In your opinion, since it's such a good one, why did Sankara get killed?
From everything that I've read and that I've observed, Sankara was killed because he didn't take heed to the warnings of his own political and military comrades when they told him that Compaoré was plotting against him. He didn't, and I won't say that he didn't take heed, but he was more giving them the bennies, giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying, well, let's see how it plays out. But, it's espionage. It's, I mean, it's espionage is warfare. Like, he was assassinated. And we see what happened with Blaise Compaoré in the years to come. We see what he was doing. So, it just is what it is. It's something we have to learn.
Can I just say something? I think his biggest failing was the security. And like many African leaders, we have very, very faint security, and we expect to survive a revolution. All of them that I've seen, if you look at when Sankara was in office, his security was still minimal. As a nation of that size, you are supposed to have a stronger set of security operatives and forces. It's not about like a massive military here. We're talking about international standard. They were still extremely low, like 5 times smaller than normal countries out there. You see what I mean? That is the problem. If your country is so fragile in terms of security, don't be surprised your leaders get assassinated. Don't be surprised your leaders die from illness in foreign countries more than they actually die in your country. Because you are not the one protecting their lives. It's foreign countries that are protecting them. And this is one of my issues with, that's one of my fears anyway, with some of the progresses we have on the continent, that it could just be a kind of distraction. If you look at what happened with the eco currency, it went on for years. They were negotiating and negotiating and negotiating, and we were all hoping in West Africa that we're going to have a common. Boom! Everything just went. Within a couple of weeks, everything disappeared. After years of planning, and this worries me because Al Mustafa said something interesting recently. He said the first TAC celebration Nigeria has had in 1970 something was a kind of distraction from what was going on within the economy. I fear that some of these actions that we see that appears to be progress is a way of just making it look like things are happening, when in reality it's just a distraction to make us think there's something happening, but while nothing is truly happening. Because in the end, our military is still extremely weak. The nations have not changed. The people that are stealing our resources, nothing has changed. It's all still going on. So my concern is fundamentals that you have to watch out for. The fundamentals have not changed. That dial has still not moved at all until Nigeria creates until Nigeria creates a 1 million man army. The dial has not moved, and the only reason why I would say the dial will move, and if that dial was a clock that starts from 12 to 1, it will be just moving 1 minute. It's not going to move at all compared to where it needs to be. It needs to go all the way around to 59. So it will just be 1, just to have 1 million man army in Nigeria. Because the problem is that since 15 something, our military readiness to or ability to confront, engage in a first world confrontation has never changed. In terms of ability to confront anybody that wants to come and steal our stuff. So if Nigeria changes that, that will be the first time a major African nation has done anything like that to confront external threat. So let's just watch this space, and until that happens, I would consider all the stuff that is happening so far a distraction. Look at Kenya. Kenya went to Congo recently. That they kicked out the M19 this thing with just 1,000 soldiers. 1,000 soldiers of Kenyan this thing. Kenya has a massive British military base there, and another American military base there. That is not our own. It doesn't belong to us. And this is some of the things like the Continental Free Trade Agreement, common passport, all those things are great things. Those are the things that someone like Kwame Nkrumah will kill to have achieved. My concern is that the stuff is that is separated from the African people. The African people don't feel close to it. We don't know what is going on. And this is what happens with the ECHO too. It wasn't very close to us. And when it went, most African people didn't even feel it. They didn't even notice that the French hijacked it, and everybody, our people are still traveling to France anyway. They don't care. You see what I mean? And the same thing will happen if all these Continental Free Trade Agreement, all this stuff you are putting in place, if they are all uprooted today, will any African person notice? They will notice, because it's not part of their lives. None of this stuff is happening with their consent. None of this stuff is happening. And this concerns me a lot, because it tells you that this leader, because if I was the one doing it, I really wanted this to work, would I not have the people invested in it? Like the way the Ethiopians did with the dam they were building, they got the people involved, so that even if you take the leader out, the people are still there. Some of that person is there to take maybe even take a more radical position. And this thing that our African leaders are doing, like the Ghanaian president went to the America recently when they went for this African summit with the US, and he was like, 1 minute he's saying that African countries should not have to rely on anybody. Then the next thing, he goes to the Secretary of State of America complaining that the Burkina Faso has some, like crying like a baby to the Secretary of State of America, then goes and takes IMF loan. This is somebody that was saying we shouldn't have to rely on anybody. This is the smoke and mirror thing that concerns me, that I fear that all this stuff you are seeing as progress may not be anything. Because Dr. Arikana, she did say something that when they gave her that position, they said, we don't expect anything from you. You shouldn't be expected to do anything. But she accomplished more than they anticipated, because she opened a lot of people's eyes to what was going on in Africa. But my point is that it tells you whether their intention is actually to change anything, because the so-called African standby force is about 6,000 strong on how can the West African standby force be 6,000? How can East African standby force be 6,000? I know that in future they might strengthen it. Let's say people like us now that are aware of these things start getting involved and taking over the initiative and increase the size. That can happen. But the reverse can also happen. The other forces can go in there and unwind all those things. So this is my concern. And whatever we are doing now, we have to be aware where we need to be moving. If that standby force is 6,000, we want to expand it to 600,000. How do you do that? Is to go get involved in the politics of the continent. Any continentals that are overseas, if they have a chance, they should go back onto the continent and start getting involved. If you really want to change things, you have to be there. You have to be on the ground, size of these forces, so that they matter. Because if, let's say, West African standby force increases, guess what? People will be clamoring in East Africa to increase their own too. In North Africa, they will be clamoring. Before you know it, the continent will be a lot stronger for it. I just feel like if we want to make change, we have to get in there. We can't just be stalking on the internet all the time, because in the end, the people that are on the ground, they are the ones that are going to change things. Thank you.
All right. I just want to acknowledge
Hey,
some
yeah.
a few,
Hey,
everything.
I just want to say peace, y'all. I gotta jump off.
All right, we
You think
appreciate you, brother. Thank you for joining. Go ahead, Moochie.
always
Yeah,
think propaganda.
I just wanted to say he had made a lot of excellent points, you know, and just one thing I want to key in on. When he was talking about like how Brazil and Argentina, they're trying to have their own like kind of regional currencies and stuff like that, and that's what Philip was talking about, their regional currencies. That is a very, very important point, because one of the key tools that the U.S. government has, and these Western governments, is that when you go against their policies, they put sanctions on you. And when they put sanctions on you, that means you cannot engage in a lot of global trade. It becomes difficult, right? You have to go through middlemen and things like that. Why? Because the US dollar is the reserve currency, so everybody uses that. And when you settle transactions, even if it's trade between Zimbabwe and China, if it involves US dollar, it has to go through New York. All right. So if African countries end up with a single currency, or even at the start, 5 or whatever it is, regional currencies, that'll make us less exposed to the US in terms of what they can do, right? Because they won't have much leverage on our economies, and we can control better economies. So I think
what is going on? What you just mentioned is what I mentioned more than 25 minutes ago, and you were arguing against me. When I was talking about the foreign debt, and I said it was in US dollars and how loans are causing problems, and then you were like arguing against it. Now you've suddenly changed.
I think you come across as a smart guy. We're talking about loans. Now I'm talking about a single currency, regional currency. That's what he had brought up. Why are you trying to link those two things together?
Can I let me just say something real quick to that. I think that's a great point that regional currencies and less exposure to the West and outside countries. But just keep in mind, things like currency markets and making big currency moves are like also a geopolitical thing, and that takes a long time to enact. Even China, which has much more strength than the African countries, is tiptoeing around doing this in the world, and they're not even necessarily guaranteed to pull this off. So sometimes we can't always think about making some type of make a currency move is a really foundational move, but you can also make gains before making like large moves like that. Like don't always bank on being able to do something like that, because there's a chance that people won't buy that currency when it comes to fruition. There's a chance that people will do currency wars against it. Like there's so many other things that can happen. So you can't always just bank on making moves like that.
No, but one thing is true. If we have regional currencies, they'll be stronger than the individual currencies, right? So that's a positive, and that will stimulate internal, like domestic demand within the regions, right? Because if you're using the same currency, then it's easier for people from one country to trade with people from the other country, because you're using the same money, like what they do in the Eurozone, right? So
I agree with that. That's a good point, Moochie. But that also, and I guess you know what, I'll concede that, but that also means that we're gonna have to do a lot more trading, and also like consumption of stuff, because a lot of our economies are geared towards exporting raw materials, and a lot of the countries in Africa actually export similar things. So we have to actually totally change into doing manufacturing of actual consumer goods for people in Africa. So that's a lot of economic change we have to do. And then people still would have to have varied goods. Like Nigeria can't be selling the same thing to Ghana or Ethiopia that they're going to sell back to them in order for them to do it exchange. And like the market in the European Union is much different than the market in South America or in Africa. So sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to make a currency common. Like there are people saying that a common currency in South America is not even a good idea. But so I'm just saying, it's like we have to also think.
Can
I
ask you guys a question? Has any of you heard about the Pan-African payment system?
So let me say this. I have not heard of that. But again, I just want to say the point. It's a great suggestion. We should actually get less exposure, but understand that when you try to make moves like that, those are much more foundational, and then you lead yourself to being attacked. I mean, that's why they said Gaddafi was attacked. The United States does not want anybody else to have separate currencies.
Yes, it's not. That's true. It's not in their interest.
Monchi, since nobody has heard about the Pan-African payments, let me just put this out there real quick. The African Union, through the African Import-Export Bank, has created what is called the Pan-African Payment and Settlement and the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS. You can Google it and you can YouTube it, and it talks about how inter-country currency swap would happen amongst countries. That's the implementation processes before they even start the regional currencies and all of that. That has been launched. It's been.
Can I ask you a question, Edward? I think you will have an insight.
Can I finish? Because you're interrupting me again. Let me finish what I'm saying, then you can ask.
Well, you don't like people asking you questions, so you share your knowledge.
Can I finish my
It's supposed to be a good thing.
You ask me afterwards when I'm done. Yeah, so that has started. The implementation process has started. There are several central banks already that are on board. Ghana is on board, Nigeria, and it works alongside with the SWIFT system as well. So a lot of that is already happening. And I think the Carry Bank as well is involved. So eventually more central banks on the African continent will get involved with that, and then that would start the processes. So it's an implementation process. So go ahead to Niger with your question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, because if anyone will come close to understanding it, maybe some other person does too. The question was that African leaders, I noticed that when they went to the American summit, they all went with their own agendas. Is it not what do you think it would take for the African leader to come to the continent and then have a single agenda that they will go out to Russia, because they are going to have one with Russia now, I think in July this year, or next time with America? How do you think it would be possible for African leaders to do this? Or is it possible? Is it not something that is possible at all?
It's almost impossible to Niger. That's the ideal, right? That's the ideal. But let me answer, man. Let me respond.
I was asked the question, so can I?
You didn't ask specifically. Anybody can answer.
No. I think he was the one I put it. Muchi, to be fair to him, he was the one I put the question to first.
Okay.
So when he finished answering, you can answer. Sorry.
Okay.
The process is currently right now. The process is currently that is being implemented. At this particular moment, every country is having one thing or the other they need from either the East or the West. But eventually, we'll get there eventually. Thank you.
All right. Okay, to Niger, this is my take on this, okay? First of all, you have to realize that not all African countries are pursuing the same agenda, right? You were talking about the dam in Ethiopia. There's a rift between Ethiopia and Egypt, which are two of the three top countries by population in Africa, right after Nigeria. Okay, so it's very hard to expect those two countries to go with the same agenda when talking to the US. Now, and we already know some of the countries. You were talking about the currency, like what they were trying to do in ECOWAS, having a single currency. Some of those leaders, like Gastemap says, which I agree with, are compromised, right? Some of them are compromised. They are on the tech, or at least the people below the presidents or whatever. I'm sure the Americans and the Europeans have more within African governments, right? So there are always people who are going to be pulling strings so that people don't go with that one agenda, right? So I think it's almost impossible. Then I want to ask, you talked about this settlement system. I haven't heard about it. I know of SWIFT. So are they going to be using a single currency? What's the proposal? I mean, in a nutshell, are they going to, how is this going to work? I mean, because as far as I know, any settlement system, usually, like at least the ones that exist today, like SWIFT, you're using the US dollar. So what is the proposal from the African Union on that?
African Union doesn't got a specific currency that they are working on. They are working on.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah, okay. I think Yad said they will. something
No,
else.
the reason why I say that, like, you can have an agenda, like saying no raw materials has to be exported out of Africa, a continent. That can be an agenda that the entire leader African countries can do, because that they can adopt, because that will increase the wealth of the continent automatically. Because if they are all on the same page, it means that every country that anybody wants to come and take resources from, they have to do some manufacturing within those countries. Or you can have even more light-hearted ones, like saying, in terms of this in sanctions, you cannot just go about sanctioning one country. Also, it's just different. You can have different agendas that is not necessarily too in depth, because I understand different countries have different agendas, but there are tones you can take to show that the continent has one voice. And so that you don't have to have too many people go out. Like in terms of security now, you can say, you know what, we need so and so pact. Be saying, I'm going to give Zambia this, I'm going to give Kenya that. No, we want Africa to have what, maybe nuclear submarine or something, or we want so and so this for weapons, so that we can use it to stop all the wars on the continent. Those type of things, there has to be a level of conversation within the continent, so they have their own agenda, so that when they go out now, they can speak with one voice. And when they speak with one voice, believe you me, if they speak to China, America will be rushing to go and have their own, present their own, what they are going to offer us to, because they now understand that the entire continent is speaking with one voice. They have a lot to gain or to lose. Can you imagine if Africa swings behind China and Russia and say India? That is the end of the West. If India, Russia, China, and Africa swing in one direction, it's the end of the West. It's over. So you see what I mean?
Yeah, but
Their power from that point of view.
That's true. That's true. That's well and good. That's true. But again, I hate to keep saying this, harping on the leadership. We have to have good leaders. Like, I'll give you a good example right now. Do you know that in Dubai, that a lot of the diamond and gold trade, a lot of it is now occurring in Dubai, but most of that is being smuggled to Dubai. It's not going through official channels. Okay, and remember, it goes through the airport, so there's collusion. There's a lot of stuff that happens. Maybe common people, a lot of people don't know, but this is the thing. So the leaders have to be inward looking. And I will always say this: I put the blame on the leaders. There is no one. The US is not stopping any single African country from putting refineries in their country, from processing their raw materials. Because
they do that. I have cases in Nigeria where they kidnap the man's husband or grandma.
Botswana is a good example. Is our neighbors. Botswana right now, most of the diamond ecosystem, they do the polishing, they do the grading. Everything is done in Botswana. De Beers to move the headquarters to Botswana. So there is nothing that good, because you know what? Botswana has good leaders. They have democracy. So it can be done. And there's some African governments, a few African governments that are being run properly. It can be done. The problem is with corrupt people who don't want to keep the ecosystem on the continent.
Botswana was just recent that happened. So
It
now
doesn't register on the Richter scale at all in terms of this type of, any kind of.
It doesn't
it's
matter.
one of those.
Okay. Oh, so we're not going to give them credit for good governance because they're small countries?
No. I agree with you. I actually, saw some documentary about Botswana. They did a lot of things right. It's a combination of so many factors, and the fact that foreigners for a long time ignored them, didn't care about the land. So all those factors help Botswana get to where they are right now.
And yes, because you know what, to Niger, you can be a small country, but guess what? I would love Nigeria to interrogate and see what Botswana did right, and you then take the best practices. Okay, I'll give you an example. When you think about manufacturing processes,
I've seen what they did right, but other countries can't achieve that because they keep getting interrupted in the process. Botswana had no time to sort itself out.
Guys, you guys are going back and forth. There was some things that were said.
Can I just say one last thing? To Niger, when you look at the manufacturing processes, right? All these auto companies, I'm in Michigan. A lot of these manufacturing processes, the lean and all these advanced manufacturing processes that they use to increase their efficiencies, they were borrowed from Japan. But Japan is a smaller country than America. So there's nothing that would stop any other African country saying, hey, Rwanda is doing this good. Nigeria is doing this good. How did they do? Let's do it the same way.
Okay, so you have made some statements. Somebody here said that the African Union is not doing anything. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement area is the brainchild of the African Union. The African Import-Export Bank was agreed upon by African leaders. African Development Banks and the African Import-Export Banks are all integrated into the African Union. So basically, right now, the African Import-Export Bank has created the PAPS, like I said earlier on, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System is being implemented currently. They have done the reach out to Caribbean countries. So you can actually see that things are happening right now on the ground. And it's an implementation process. It's not an overnight miracle. It's going to take a long while. It's going to probably take 30, 40, 50 years of implementation. You can see that happen with the EU, with the EU Commission, with the EU, with the EU's trade policy, with when they even rolled out the euros. When they rolled out the euro, which was in the late 90s. So now you can see all of that from even the EU perspective. On the African continent, is as leaders, it's not everything that you're going to have to come out and say, hey, we want a regional currency and this and that. You can see what's happening with BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And currently, right now, the chairperson of the BRICS International Organization is South Africa. Just recently, there's going to Russia, China, and South Africa are holding military joint drills at the southern coast of Africa. So there are several things you have to consider. The fact that the African continent is non-alignment. So they don't tilt towards the Western Bloc or tilt towards the Eastern Bloc. It's always rational. A lot of the militaries you people think is just nonsense. There's a lot of equipment they're able to get from both sides. The African continent right now is just grabbing as much technology as it can. That's what you're seeing happening right now. And then the implementation processes will take a while, but it's at least heading in the right direction at this particular time. And it's the same leaders you guys are
Hey,
talking about.
we're gonna close out. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, family. Dynasty Search for Uhuru. Peace.
All right, take care.